Hi, Ron. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wow, first time I know it over 2 years. I know we have only known a couple days ago, but.
Still.
I know it's our first meeting with in person.
Yeah, well, we had one workshop,
A workshop,
but it is seriously our first. Okay. Wow, board meeting. All right. Milestone.
That's my.
And then we can have a public.
First meeting.
Okay, there we go. I should be able to admit
Okay.
two people are in the waiting,
We can see that.
right up top of Sue's window. Maybe Sue can see you. Sue, can you hear us? Can you admit people? And keep an eye on that.
On the phone.
You have to be together. In the audience, can you hear us? Sue, can you hear us?
I can hear you. It's a bit garbled. I think if you talk very slowly, it might help.
So it's kind of like, oh, pick up the sound and you kind of have to put it in the middle. We need a mic for the field. Yeah, you can't, it's not worth it.
So we got white.
The bar, shoot the bar. Can we move it over here? Can the bar, can that just the bar, can the bar come on?
Well,
Just say that it's just attached by cord.
just sitting there.
Ron,
No, it's hardwired.
Oh, Alan will.
You have a question?
Ron, you're almost incomprehensible. It's awful.
I think it would be better to hear than see, so if we bring it forward. Yeah. Is there a way that you can somewhere have the voice on?
Or can we just mute that and use the?
Try that.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Actually, it's improved. Would you say, Alan? It's improved right now.
No, I would say it has not improved.
Oh, maybe it's just for me.
So we're gonna try to mute the TV and go through Sarah's computer. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, it's much better than it was. There's an echo, but it's
He needs
better.
to turn off his audio on that. No. Okay, is that better?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, but
yes.
okay, we're gonna try this.
I think it's going to be important for only one person to speak at a time, because when two of you speak, it becomes completely garbled.
Okay. Do the best we can.
It's better that way anyway.
If I could suggest something, Sarah, you need to mute your computer because that's causing the feedback.
Jim, we've muted the main computer in room 5 and we're running off my computer because there was too much feedback. I joined without computer audio, so I don't think that was the problem.
Right now, it sounds quite good.
Okay, it's because I'm speaking and it's in front of me, so we'll move it around. Anybody know ASL?
Okay, let's go on the planning board meeting, that's September 20th. We'll take a roll call.
We,
Continue you don't have to do that. And you can continue the public hearing.
we cannot hear that at all.
Sarah, why don't you?
Okay. Okay, we're gonna call the meeting to order. And we're going to open the continued public hearing for the purpose of discussing zoning changes. And that, I believe we need a roll call vote. So, Ron. Laura. I vote yes.
Yes.
Mary
Yes.
and Christine.
Yes.
Okay, do we have, I don't see Gail on, Sue. Is she?
I did not confirm that she was coming. I assumed she was. I also do not see her.
Okay, are you able to take notes?
Well, I can take notes from what I hear.
Yeah, okay.
I tried to listen to meetings and they're not comprehensible.
I think. I think we have to continue. Yes. We can all go to separate rooms. All right, do we want to go ahead, jump into our agenda tonight is to review our zoning articles, and we asked board members to propose motions to amend any of the articles, and Sue consolidated them, and we will take them. The board members, I think, all have a paper copy. Is that correct? Hello. Okay.
Very good.
Great. Well, I have an extra one of these, John, if you want to grab it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so, and we agreed last time that we would start with Article 11, which is amending section 9.1 of accessory dwelling units. So the handout is, I couldn't help myself when I put them together. I put them in order. So we start on page 5 for modifications to accessory dwelling units section of the proposed motions. So we have a couple of proposed motions. Are there any other ones that people want to suggest? Okay. Do you have it written down, or do you want to? Why don't we take them? We have a couple more after this. I don't know. So I'll start with the first one, which is to, I'm not sure whose this was, move to modify section 9.1 use regulations of the ADUs to read section general line 56, to read the ADU shall meet the primary dwelling setback with the addition of and lot coverage requirements of the district. Was that your? That was your, okay. Where's it? Where are you looking? Okay. So any discussion to add and lot coverage? A good suggestion. So motion, Laura has moved that. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Laura's moved, Chris is second. Any discussion to add that?
Let me check my handwritten copy. See if I can- I went from the link that was provided.
Sarah, If-
Yeah,
if there is a discussion going on, we cannot hear it at all.
okay, I think we're just trying to find our spot.
Oh, okay, I beg your pardon.
Let's use the section numbers, not line numbers, because the SharePoint version line numbers may be off by 1 or 2. Yep, so 1.
Yes. 1 moment. I think it's actually a typo. It should be 9.1.2 regulations. Am I right about that? Yep, that's what it is. Yep.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, just
number
use regulations.
Line 56, which is number 5, item number 5. Okay. You shall meet the primary dwelling setback. Addition and lot coverage requirements of the district.
Okay. Yep. Okay,
56 was right, 9.1, it should be 9.12.
Okay. so Sue, it's to modify section 9.1.2 use regulations, number 5, and add and lot coverage. I believe you have the printout.
Yes,
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Do a roll call or?
No, I don't think we have to.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I vote. There you go. So six voting for. Okay, the next one is to modify section 9.1.4 special permits. This is around accessory dwelling units. To add again and lot coverage in that section. Same thing.
Item number.
Item, yep, item,
Item number 2A.
I'll second that.
okay, any discussion? All in favor? Oh, Mayor Stewart. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? I vote yes. Okay, 6-0 on that one.
Sarah,
Yes,
I'm sorry, I had my hand up, but I think you were busy with other things. I can only hear you, not others, and I'm not sure that my presence is very useful here. If you have questions for me, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off.
anybody have any questions for Alan Wilson? Okay, thank you for coming tonight, Alan.
My pleasure. My kudos to you guys for doing all this hard work.
Thank you. Anybody who is speaking into the chat, we are not monitoring the chat. If it's, unless it's procedural, and Sue, maybe you can do that. If there's any.
This meeting is
Sarah, the only thing that was questioned, is this a public hearing? Will you be presenting the text of the zoning bylaws or the changes discussed? Because people really,
Can't figure out.
most of it is that they cannot hear anyone but you, and it may be necessary for you to paraphrase everything.
Go back to the other one.
I don't know why I can't.
978-317-0629, you need to mute. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll try to paraphrase. For people who are trying to figure out what the heck we're doing, we are reviewing the nitty-gritty details of the motions for the November town meeting. This is not a public hearing for comment, but it is the continuation of a public hearing for our discussion of these articles. The articles are found on our website. and right now we are discussing the article number 11, accessory dwelling units. But we are, as you can hear, if you can, that we are simply going through and adding, in the last 2 votes, we added lot coverage requirements of the district into procedural places. Is that fair summary? Okay. Sandy, you have your hand up. You have a question, an inability to hear, and we're not taking public comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand why this was stated online, that it was a public hearing without public comment. I guess that it would just be a public meeting, just so we can hear you, which would be a normal meeting. So I didn't understand what the procedures were.
It's a continued discussion portion of the public hearing that we opened in May. So I understand your confusion, but we've closed the public comment portion of the public hearing. But please feel free to stay on, and if you want to try to follow along, the website is the best place to find the material that we are amending or discussing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Great. So the next one is to move to modify.
Sarah, somehow you muted yourself.
Sorry. Okay. Again, to the motion here is it from Laura, I believe, again, to modify 9.1.4 by adding after line 96 a new item that would be trigger a special permit for an ADU, which is to construct an additional curb cut in any district. That's a third trigger for a special permit when with an ADU. Correct. Correct. That would be a third. So there are 2. No, it's a number 3. So
I think it would mean that there'd be a special permit for the ADU if it required a second curb cut. Well, you'd have to go get approval for the curb cut separately.
Right. This would trigger an additional curb cut, would trigger a special permit for the ADU. It doesn't, it's not speaking to the that a curb cut would be approved. The curb cut would still have to go through the curb cut process. Okay.
One curb cut using the existing driveway, and then if an additional curb cut is requested, that triggers a special permit review by the special permit granting authority in that case.
Any other discussion?
I see that goes counter to what this ADU bylaw is trying to attempt with keeping it within a single resident house, trying to maintain the neighborhood and streets, and now you're at it, you could potentially have 2 curb cuts every time you have an ADU. So I think it's going counter to what we're trying to accomplish in seamlessly adding ADUs into neighborhoods.
So, Mary, I'm definitely open to another place to state this, and what I'm trying to do is prevent the kind of backdoor or unintentional approvals of second curb cuts in these ADUs. And in other places in the language as it's written, it says, for instance, in 9.1.2, the ADU shall be contained within the residential structure, not in a detached building, and shall use the existing driveway entrance as a curb cut. Another place says, under 9.1.3 use regulations general, a minimum, this is item 3, a minimum of 1 off-street parking space shall be provided for the ADU in addition to the required parking spaces for the principal dwelling to prevent unnecessary expansion of the impervious surfacing, and ADU parking may use the existing driveway. So I think there's some lack of clarity in that the default should be 1 curb cut, 1 driveway access, even if additional parking is created. So what I was trying to do was make that clear in the things that get bumped to special permit. But if there's a better way to do that, we could disallow it and we could make that statement more strongly. Right now, people are coming back and seems like these are coming up. That's exactly a good example. Right.
So, and I understand what you're trying to do, Laura. My concern is people will do curb cuts for a parking spot for the ADU. And no, I understand. Yeah. I just don't think if we have a parking problem, now you're taking on-street parking away. Like that's my concern with our bylaw. That's a street that the students are already taking up, and now you're taking away an on-street parking spot in a very congested area. So there's not enough parking in many neighborhoods. So to go down this route and say that we're going to give it by special permit is conservative. A special permit doesn't say it's going to be given.
So I think it's do it, otherwise we have this problem we have on that site, which is they get their ADU and then they come back to all their use for that. And so this is saying if your ADU is adding another.
So what does the language say for by right? It says you have to be within, it has to be a single.
It says on the one hand that you.
On the one hand, you shall use the existing driveway entrance as the curb cut. Several paragraphs down, to prevent unnecessary expansion of impervious surfacing, the ADU parking may use the existing driveway. That's not the curb cut, so that is a little different. But it does seem to me it needs some clarity. If the default is going to be 1 curb cut, which I think we're all trying to get to, what's the best way to do that? Shall use the existing driveway is another drive. We could say shall use the existing driveway and curb cut. That would make it clearer. And then, yeah. So may I modify my motion? So we'll strike from 9.1.4 the clause number 3 that I offered, and instead to 9.1.3 use general regulations general, item number 3. ADU parking shall use the existing driveway and curb cut. And I think that does it. Yep.
Change may to shall.
Yep.
Okay.
And add curb cut.
And curb.
And curb cut.
Fine.
So the motion is to modify section 9.1.3, number 3, changing may to shall use the existing driveway and curb cut. Okay, so I have a second. Laura has moved that. Do I have a second? Chris Olney seconds. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Great, 6-0 there. Great, thank you. Okay. Yes, any other motions on Article 11?
Can we do potential typos without motions? So I guess line 7, where it says
well, 6 to 7, it says, and the general district and ZBA in residential districts 1 and 2. I don't think that clarifies that that's D1 and D2. There was. Okay, that might be the only typo. I will start out. Okay, great. If I say I would like to move, right? I would like to move to postpone the Article 11 ADU bylaw for the November town meeting until we can do the proper analysis of what is the potential impacts to the town and the neighborhood's character, what is the increase to neighborhood density, what is the stressors on public services, increased public school enrollment, traffic, cars, parking, impact to water supply, impact to sewer, all of that. Can I keep saying, or do I just, that's my motion? I'd like to explain why, but that's my motion.
Great. So I'm gonna paraphrase that, pursue to move to postpone Article 11 in the November town meeting, and then until we can do a comprehensive analysis of this article on town services.
School enrollment. Yes.
I second it.
Okay, discussion?
And the reason for that, which I believe we need for all of these bylaws, is we as a town need a strategic plan with moving forward with how we can absorb any potential new housing. You know, we've tried to get the data on how many ADUs we have. That is hard to get. But I think it still merits the best case scenarios and worst case scenarios. I think we can definitely tweak our ADU bylaw. I just think this is not currently the proper way to do it.
Other discussion?
My concern with this bylaw is that when you couple this ADU bylaw with the cluster housing and senior housing, there's no answer of if you can add an ADU onto something else. And for those reasons, we haven't gone through the unintended consequences of this one particularly. Can you tack this on to something else? We haven't answered a lot of the questions. We haven't gone through a lot of the scenarios. And before we can bring this to the people, I think we need to do better homework.
Sarah, was there a second?
Christine was the second.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak to that because I also thought about this and was thinking that maybe we should delay this, but I've changed my mind for a couple of reasons. One is this is a 900 square foot ADU within an existing dwelling. This isn't families. And the second thing is I feel like it was part of the master plan, and I think it is controversial. And I think we should let the voters decide. It's been batted around for now 3 or 4 years, and we should just put it out there and let people decide. And then lastly, I'll say that when we've been trying to convey to you what Sarah Mellish said, and she said she thinks it will not pass. That's what she said, right? I mean, that was her feedback on this. But I think my opinion is that we should move it forward and see if it passes or it's not. And some of the motions that I've put forward actually anticipate that it might not pass. So yeah, understood.
From single family to 2 family across the town. It changes our zoning. If you don't want to say that, that's fine, but it does. It creates every neighborhood as a 2 family, and it's by right. So there's no neighborhood impact. so, or in feedback, so.
I speak to that. We are actually limiting it to only 20 a year. It's not like anybody can do it anytime they want. There are only 20 allowed. And if you look at other towns and cities in the region, only 5 to 10 actually get created. So we're not,
There's 3 on my street in the last year.
well, I can't, that's maybe that's true. I don't know, but in general, you're not going to get that many. And the final thing is, you know, you're allowed by right to have 4 boarders in your house right now. So what difference does it make if you're adding a kitchen to it?
Okay, Ron, you have
Chris told my son that it was only gonna be 20 a year. It was brought to us by a citizen's petition, which was, we watered it, we really reduced down to make it more manageable. So I think we've got a good law here.
I would like to, before we vote on it, I want to say 2 things. Before we vote on whether to advance this article or not, I'd like to go through all the articles and let's discuss all of them and then talk about which ones we want to advance rather than doing one and waiting to see what the next shoe to drop is. And on the ADUs, I will say that our town, like many towns, is single family by right. And we are in a housing crisis. And that's not to say we want to change the character of the town. The character of the town, the natural resources are very important to protect. There is a cause for diversity of housing, diversity of income, and diversity of ages in housing. So I think this has a real impact on people's lives. And so I would like to continue to work on this, whether we take it forward in November or after that.
So are you making a motion to table this motion?
Until the end of the meeting. Yes.
And how do you vote on one versus the other? Can I make a comment on the original motion? Part of my concern, I think, is that I think we need to, you know, we're changing a lot within our current ADU bylaw. We're changing it from special permit to by right. We're changing the size. We're changing the owner occupied down to 6 months. Where 20 a year is actually a high number. We may not get it, but if we do, 20 is pretty high. So it is important to understand the impacts. And I think to Laura's point with wanting to delay the vote on this, we don't know, we haven't clarified that ADUs wouldn't be permissible in residential conservation clusters or senior housing complexes or what are the other things we have up here? So, you know, we might be opening a can of worms, and this isn't to say I'm against accessory dwelling units. I'm all for accessory dwelling units, and we can still have them by special permit. It's not an onerous process, but I think it merits holding off on the November town meeting.
I appreciate you making a motion there. Laura suggested and actually made a motion to table this till at least just defer this till later in the meeting. Does anybody second that, or should we vote the motion now? I'm not hearing a second. So, Sue Brown.
Oh, if you're ready to vote, I would go ahead.
Okay. So I did, the motion to table this to later in the meeting has failed for the lack of a second. So we will take a vote on Mary's motion, which is to move to postpone Article 11 from the November town meeting until we can do an analysis on a broad array of topics, which she has articulated. Okay, all in favor of, let's take a hand vote here of Mary's motion. 2, all those opposed? Okay, motion fails 2 to 4.
Can I ask Mary a question at this point? Mary, if ADUs were allowed by special permit only, but the requirement that it be a double lot size and that the requirement that it only be for a house built before 1984. If those two and 4 parking spaces, if those 3 conditions were taken out of the existing bylaw, would you be in favor of that? Yeah, and just
That's about what we're
delete
gonna talk about right now.
Okay. I want you to think
I
about that.
think what you're going, and I think the answer is pretty much, I have to think about it a little bit more than just now, but yes, the special permit is what's bothersome.
Okay, so the next motion on, there, wait a minute, you had some more on 11? Any more motions on Article 11?
Okay. And the, other motions that I would like to get to is, and which other towns definitely do, is limit number of occupants in ADUs, so you kind of know what demographic you're getting. Require owner occupied, require special permit, and reduce the number of 20 per year to a smaller number. And I'm concerned with now even allowing them in District D1 and D2. Well, when we currently don't.
Don't allow them to do it. Well, we would allow them by special permit.
Right, but we currently don't allow them at all.
We don't allow them, technically, we don't allow them at all anywhere in town.
Well, but even by a special permit for D1 and D2, we don't allow.
So let me take the first one, is to change the number from 20 per year to what?
Well, but in some regards, some of this is a moot point, because if everybody else is for the article and I'm not, then there's no need, and these are my changes, not the 4 that voted for it.
I think they can all be discussed.
I think they
Absolutely.
can all be discussed.
I think that, for example, to construct an ADU in R1 or R2, right? As a modification, that's why I mentioned changing the number from 20 to 15. 20 is, it seems to me to be worth trying for the beginning. And
Sarah, could you turn the microphone? I really cannot catch any of this.
Laura's going to speak.
If we're going to discuss motion 11, I think starting with a special permit requirement is a good place to start. Because other factors such as the number 15 or 20, that feels somewhat arbitrary to me. But there are things in our existing regulation that make it nearly impossible to get an ADU, such as the double lot size. So if we can make it more practicable to get an ADU and take some of those factors away that are really limiting it to the extent that it almost doesn't exist as a regulation. If we can kind of write all of those factors and get consensus about that, and then have the discussion about, is it a special permit or is it by right? Or maybe in certain districts, is it by right or special permit? Maybe we can decouple those things and have a conversation about that and get to consensus on this. I'd be hopeful.
In that vein, let's discuss the next motion without recognizing that we haven't fully gone through your list on 11, okay? So this has been banted around, so I thought, let's write it down. And so my motion, if the prior motion were to pass at town meeting, this would become moot and be passed over. My proposed Article 12, okay? But let's assume for a moment that the town meeting does not accept Article 11. Then we would advance this next one, which is to see if the town will modify, this is the article, so to Article 9.1 of the zoning by the existing zoning bylaws, to delete section 9.1.2, which is except in single residential E, the lot size shall be 2 times the minimum lot size. And B, the single family dwelling shall have existed on the lot as of March 1st, 1984. So these two things were suggested to us by Sarah Mellish and others, as we've just been discussing and renumbering them, the remaining sections as appropriate. So this would be an attempt to address the arduous ADU existing sort of double lot, and it seems to me to be a little bit arbitrary single family dwelling as of March 1st, 1984, which may have seemed like a good idea in 1987. I mean, I guess by the same logic, we could say 5 years prior, but let's not go there. Yeah, I guess the idea was that it would, I don't know how it came about. Anyway, so that's my motion.
I'd like to add one more thing to that.
Okay,
Currently, a 2-family dwelling requires 3 parking spaces. The ADU language says 4. It seems to me it should mimic a 2-family house parking requirement by requiring 3 instead of 4.
makes sense. Okay, so friendly amendments. So to add to that and require 3 parking spaces, we're now on what is listed as Article 12. And Chris seconds.
I didn't second, but I will.
I can't, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what is being amended.
Okay, you have it in your list as Article 12.
I got your part. I just didn't hear
Yep.
Chris
And-
said he was going to
Okay.
amend.
And we're going to require 3 parking spaces, not 4.
Thank you.
And Sarah moved and Chris seconded. So now we're going to discuss that. So again, this would be an article that at least I would see us only advancing. We would move to pass over if the prior one passed. The prior one fails, we'll at least fix the current bylaw. Or, I'm not, yeah, discussion. Laura.
If we're going this route, and it may be a viable route, I'm concerned that we have lost a couple of the protections that we're trying to put in, which are, for instance, lot coverage and limiting that. And limiting the number of curb cuts that can be considered, because our existing regulations don't address those strongly enough. Not to mention the size. What's our size requirement now? Okay, so it's not a fixed number. I thought that Sarah Mellish was concerned at one point, or that she said the ZBA was concerned at one point that we weren't going big enough, that people wanted bigger ADUs. I think we're really trying to limit the size of what an ADU is. And I don't think this is moving in the right direction, I guess, versus doing nothing, but it's leaves some protections out.
So I think we all agree with you, but I think if in terms of strategy, let's can we increment our way there? This is not to Mary's point earlier, number 12 is not a comprehensive fix of the ADU bylaw, as you've pointed out, and but it does do the 2 most egregious things, and then if I think it's something we would have to come back to. So that's my opinion. I think we can't again, if you just sort of think through the scenario, we present number 11, it passes, on we go. If it doesn't pass, we then would do this, and simply to say, we want to just fix these 2 things that the ZBA has basically asked us to fix. That's the rationale. Yes, go ahead.
So we have a motion 12, but it seems like it might be worth going back and revisiting motion 11 for special permit, yes or no, and seeing if we can get number 11 to a place that we all feel good about. I don't know if that's possible, but.
So I think motion 11, Article 11 was trying to get a by right. And I think that's the root cause of the concern. So if we were to modify 11 and take out the by right and move it to a special permit, then some of the concerns go away and some of the perceived opportunities depending on your perspective, right? It depends on your perspective. If you want to have some ADUs by right, then that would be, and I think that's the crux of the, we've said by right, very small with lots of constraints. In fact, by right at 900 square feet as your maximum. Anything above that is special permit, which is what we have today. And as Laura has pointed out, we have some really good thinking about curb cuts and character and other things, lot coverage, that are not in our existing ADU bylaw. So.
But is our existing bylaw is also not right?
Correct.
So by motion 12, that's a factor in the which makes it like a special permit, when what we're trying to do
A piloting of the ADUs in town. Maybe it's moving from special permit to special permit, but fixing those weaknesses in the regulations to address all of these factors that we're trying to do to limit the size and lot coverage and the number of curb cuts and parking and so forth. So it's not a choice of special permit to by right, it's a choice of weaker special permit, stronger special permit with more controls, but also making it possible to actually do an ADU, which it isn't currently, effectively.
Think of a compromise, grand compromise here, which is 12. And then 11, we might say, to start out, let's just allow 10 by right with all these constraints on it and see what happens. And if we only get 5, then maybe 10 is a good number. And if we get applications for 25, then maybe another town meeting, we say, let's up it from 10 to 20.
The concerns of people by right. When you talk about creating another entrance to the existing home, it could be that only entrance to this home is, in somebody's kitchen. Like there could be, you're now, entering and traveling in some of these areas, it's congested. So without the neighbors having input on some of these, where an extra entrance is going to go, a normal entrance is in the front and the back. These ADUs are going on the sides, they're going in odd places. So neighbors not having any comments or being able to request screening is, in my opinion, not the way to develop neighborhoods. It's the way to develop angry neighbors.
So let me just correct, the by right proposal is for no new exterior entrances in the front.
I know. So now you're gonna go outside. You're gonna go to the setbacks, and what we saw was a private area and it's not gonna be an entrance for.
But on the other hand, if you own a house and you want to put a side entrance in your house, you can do that by right. So what's the difference?
You're not technically adding, you're not adding other people per se.
But you could be adding people. You could be adding your mother-in-law could move in. You build a door on the right. The mother has a bedroom in there. The only difference is that with an ADU, she has her own kitchen. Without it, she's using your kitchen. That's all we're talking about here. So the neighbors, yes, neighbors should have input up when there's some material impact that that's going to affect them. But by right, if you can build an entrance on the side of your house anyway, how can the neighbors object?
Okay,
Well,
Okay.
I guess neighbors will adjust, but
okay. Laura has one more.
One more, the trying to get at limiting the kind of pilot of this by the cap, whatever number the cap is, I think is working against us because you're number 10, you get to do it by right. Number 11, you don't get to do it by right. You got to go before the special permit. The special permit process in town, I think by and large, still permits projects to happen. So if we do a special permit, I think, okay, let's do it that route, but let's also make sure that it's fair and reasonable. It doesn't overly encumber the process. I think we should stay away from demographics, not our business. We're limiting it by size. And put some controls in place that will ensure that there is a review and that these size constraints and curb cut restraints and all that are in there, making it a stronger regulation. But then let's say where we draw the line that, we're not going to go to number of people occupying it, that we're not going to go by double the lot size and other things that are really maybe not the purview.
Okay, what we wanted to do tonight was to work through a bunch of motions. I think we've actually come up with some really interesting ideas here. But in the interest of time, I'm going to suggest that we table ADUs. We can table my number 13 because I'll take my own advice and then make some motions. And we're going to have to vote these things up or down. I think we've had a couple of them, number of ADUs, you had a list. Maybe changing the by right to special permit, a couple other things, and let's vote them up or down at our next discussion. I think we've actually had some productive discussions here, but I don't think we're gonna resolve. I think we can resolve a lot of other things while we kind of cogitate on that, if you don't mind. Since we don't have a motion on the table, I'm gonna move to the next motions, which are any motions on Article 10, senior housing. And for people listening, we decided that we always get to Articles 11 and 10 and 9 at the wee hours of the night. And Christine, I thought very appropriately suggested that we take them in reverse order so that we would do maybe the easy ones last. So Article 10 is motions related to a new section 9.3 senior housing. And I didn't receive any motions for that, but Mary has one.
May I make some comments and then some potential motions? I will preface it by, I think we need senior housing. I'm confused. The more I read this bylaw, the more confused I get. We are mixing true housing with commercial development, which falls into the category of assisted living, nursing home, convalescent homes. So we are now saying that every neighborhood would become a mixed use neighborhood, because if assisted living is commercial, we're saying that could go into any neighborhood. I think we really need to step back and understand the different districts and what the different districts can handle. I don't think some districts can handle a senior housing complex that could be assisted living or a nursing home that's going to have food deliveries and truck deliveries and dumpsters and employee parking and all that kind of stuff. So I would like to see two senior housing bylaws, one that's truly housing and one that is commercial senior housing. Potentially by district, but I think there's some commercial senior housing that, like in District D or the more dense districts, probably couldn't handle so easily. I'm confused with a lot of the details of accessory structures, but it doesn't really define what an accessory structure is. Could you have senior housing, which is truly senior housing, and have an ADU? I don't know. there's design standards and it says in addition to the listed requirements, I don't know what that means. We limit it to 2 bedrooms, but could you have loft space that could actually be a bedroom and a bathroom up there? And then you've got 3 or 4 bedrooms. You know, like so many of the other bylaws, I'd like to see a true assessment with wastewater and water and capacity. I mean, the senior housing bylaw doesn't really even match up to the senior housing definition that we had in the definition. So to me, there's a lot to work through. I mean, my first motion would be to postpone it at November town meeting and work through some of these details that we haven't done. So I don't feel comfortable as a planning board member bringing this to residents to vote because we haven't done what we need to do.
Okay, so I think I heard Mary made a motion to table Article 10 past the November town meeting. Is that correct? Do I have a second? Okay, table 2. Okay, I have a question.
Is there a second?
Yes, there is. Christina, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. I have a question about this one, because this predates Laura and me on the board. Where did we use a model of another town, or did Mark Bobrowski come up with this? Where did this language come from?
This came from Mark Bobrowski.
Okay, came from Mark Bobrowski. Okay. Sue, do you know where this language came from?
It came from Mark Bobrowski. He has used this in other communities and he offered it to us.
Okay.
Is it in the use table where it can be?
Not yet. If you look at I think the motion has a, adding it to the use table as part of this motion or something.
Sarah,
Yes.
I just want to confirm that each of these, any of these is by special permit. So this is not a by right use at all.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table to table this. When can we speak to that? Rather than okay, go ahead.
So my biggest concern with this is that exactly, we're not separating the commercial versus, we're not defining like the 55 plus active lifestyle. So we don't even talk about that in the definitions. You have like senior housing facility, but why does it have to be a facility? What, Hamilton's, on Tobacco Road, they're proposing townhouses, 25 townhouses on that lot. We don't address that. That's not in this. We address like assisted living, independent living, and long-term care. We don't address true residential housing for seniors. That's age restricted.
The comment was this doesn't address age restricted housing, but that could be done with a residential conservation cluster or just a housing, a multi-family in a district that allows 2-family or 3-family, right? I could do a 3-family in the general district and have it age restricted. So because we don't address it doesn't mean it's not allowed.
Commercial development, which I don't think that's really what we need.
You just say that again.
I think we're allowing commercial development in residential neighborhoods. I think we're trying to get age restricted housing in residential neighborhoods. That's what we need. I don't think we need assisted living or memory care in a small neighborhood. I don't think that's what we're trying to allow.
Yeah. So we all have this idea of assisted living being 80 unit complex with dining facilities and all these services, but an assisted living unit can be 8 units in a building and run effectively as assisted living, or even 4. And there are a lot of them around. There are these these little clusters of houses together, and a visiting nurse or somebody comes in once a day and delivers meals to these people and checks their temperatures and pats them on the back, and that's a valuable service to those people. That's called assisted living. It's the same term as for a great big fancy one. But how are we going to decide whether it's 4 units or 80 units or 25 units? We can't, and that's why a special permit is so important here, because then the planning board can say, okay, in this tight congested neighborhood, we're not going to allow a 80 unit assisted living facility, but we might allow 4 units in a building that's there already. And I think about these big mansions up in, along all over the coast. What's going to happen to those?
I completely, I'm concerned with this tear down, and we don't have any tear down delay projects. I feel with some of these developers are going to take advantage of us changing these bylaws and tearing something down and building something. So
Well, they have to get a special permit to do it.
I would say, and has everything that, or the ZBA has everything that's within a bylaw, and you only just getting a special permit. We have a pretty clear track record that we allow most of the special permits, and otherwise we're opening ourselves up to appeals because they say, well, what we've laid out what we need and we've done it, and now you're going to deny it. So I think if we are looking for those smaller clusters of assisted living within residential districts, we should define that. And then, we've discussed assisted living and senior housing complexes in the LCD, which I think is a great opportunity. Both of my parents are assisted living and stage living community, and you just need enough space to do what you really want or need to do in these types of facilities.
Absolutely.
So I don't think, a district B, a district B, D or B, or, some of the districts are conducive to this. And I think we really need to look at it and assess it district by district. Otherwise, I think it does open up a lot, and we could have unintended consequences with it. I think something similar to the EDU, if you said that if you were going to do this within an existing structure, I would be better, or would be more accountable.
Okay, so we have a motion to table this till November, after November. Let me ask one other question. That is, if we were simply to modify the districts for this go around, to sort of Laura's point previously, like, let's dip our toe in here and modify this to say, by striking districts D1, D2, and the general district, and remove
the general district. Would you not allow it?
well, it's tight and it's, you got part,
But
that's where you want
walkable to
that's
downtown.
walkable. Yeah, that's true.
I'm just saying this first, so that could be-
Yeah. So what if we said not in districts? I mean, we can talk about which districts, if we were to limit which districts, and
I think the general LCD.
sorry,
The general district and the LCD.
why not?
So,
E's big, too long.
so think about the public housing resolution.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are, I guess,
Some of those are district D.
some are in D, yeah, Newport Park, I think.
Yeah, but those are assisted living,
Those are senior housing facilities.
Yeah.
Well, that's what,
But they.
yeah. Are we gonna require them to go to 40B to get done,
Okay.
or could we allow them by a special permit?
To me, that's an existing use already.
Okay, so let's try to, we have a motion to table it after November, and then we're gonna take up perhaps some amendments, if we move forward with it, if we decide to move forward. So so the any more discussion on the motion to table this to after November? Yes, Laura.
I feel like we're getting somewhere with the discussion of the districts. I hate to just table it. Maybe it's, if we're pushing too hard, okay, but I hate to just table it when it feels like we're sitting here making a little progress and we could talk about doing our own whatever districts. So I would prefer to keep working on it
Okay.
and then discuss.
Are you okay with if we just continue this table, withdrawing that motion at least for right now? And then and to have a little bit more discussion and then come back. Okay.
We have not done enough true assessment and, like a select board member said last night, case studies on any of these types of things. So I would like to see the planning board step up and do a little more analysis on these.
So let's are you okay withdrawing this motion to table for just a little bit for the moment? Okay. Anybody want to make a specific motion to try to improve Article 10, which is the motion for senior housing? Okay.
600 square foot studio unit. If I have enough land, this is saying that I could put enough 600 square foot studio units in my backyard, which I have enough room for 8. I have that much land. Well, so why would she get denied a special permit?
Because we think it's a bad idea to put 600 unit studios in your backyard.
So sure we could, if it's a bad idea, then why are we putting more restrictions on it?
Why is it going to go into somebody's backyard?
Where's it going?
I think the argument, just to reframe Christina's argument, I'm not sure I buy it, is that if she sells her house to me and I'm a developer of senior housing is both nonprofit and for-profit, and there's a lot of money to be made in that realm. And so I might elect to buy a single family house and convert it into 8 600 square foot studios by special permit. So I think that's what you're saying is objectionable. So the question is, the objectionableness, I think, is a matter of opinion. I think you're right that it's possible. And I think you're right, it's by special permit. So there would have to be sufficient parking and the neighbors would weigh in and all of that. And then the question is, is it a bad thing or is it a good thing? And that's really a matter of opinion, I think.
Motion?
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so move to modify the districts. I'm gonna get this right.
Could you,
Yes.
thank you.
Move for Article 10 to modify the districts, that I'm talking through this out loud, to be allowed by special permit in the LCD, the general district, E, I think. And then this part I'm not sure about, so I'm working through it out loud. In other districts where the existing use is in place, such as our existing senior housing.
And lots.
In a district where that use is already in place on a lot.
I think we should name the district.
Okay.
Instead of saying, we should.
Well, so I know it exists in RD 1 or 2. I'm thinking of.
What can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I like in residential district E, general district, limited commercial districts, and other lots where the use is currently exist, and other lots where that use exists, where senior housing. Bad idea. I don't know. Okay. Um, the motion, the Article 10 says move to amend the zoning bylaws to add a row in table 4.2 of Manchester C, allowed uses to indicate senior housing as an allowed use by special permit so the allowed lots where the senior housing doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's.
So we
It
just
does.
cross out A, B, C.
And D1 and D2.
All right, go ahead, Sue.
Thank you, Sarah. I just wanted to point out that a special permit has an entire section on criteria and performance standards, which would allow you to comfortably deny a special permit. So I think if someone were to go in and buy something in a crowded neighborhood, that all the criteria that we have and in our improved standards and site plan review and special permit standards, I think provide more than adequate opportunity for comfortably denying it. So I think trying to shoehorn and try to select districts now without really knowing, what lots are there, what might be appropriate, I think is trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. I think that the language that's proposed really gives the board the most protection and flexibility to allow or to disallow it. So that's it. Thank you.
So the one thing I'm struggling with, I hadn't really until tonight thought about the fact that these would be, well, I had sort of, but commercial, essentially for-profit, potentially senior housing. Not that that's bad or necessarily, but given that seems like everybody I know is dealing with elderly parents and the significant traffic that one person can generate for caregivers. I'm not sure it's I'm not sure it scales with, 10 people is 10 times that, because there's some economies of scale, but certainly a special permit would need to very much take that into account, the use. And I think that that's the point of the special permit process and the standards therein. So I'm sort of saying two things. One is I understand the concern of a neighbor if a existing one family home were to be converted into a 10-unit senior housing with significant levels of care, because at least on traffic, you would certainly have a lot of traffic. We could have visitors and you'd have caregivers, and that would have to be factored in very carefully into the special permit process. So I can understand a neighbor's concern. And then the question is, does the special permit process give sufficient safeguards for a neighborhood, for particularly around traffic?
And can I add to that? In fact, an impact study could be required, which would provide Mary with the answers that she wants to know and what the impact would actually be of a 20-unit, 50-unit, 60-unit property.
Project, or we can do those case studies. We can say, if a 40-unit goes in district If a 40 unit goes into District D, if we've got 4 applications in 1 year, if we really have to think of these scenarios and think of best case scenarios and worst case scenarios, and unintended consequences. And I just don't think that we have. I cannot personally, as a planning board member, bring this to residents and feel like we've looked at every angle of this and we are confident this fits nicely into neighborhoods. I just can't.
And we cannot create enough data. You'd need it's never been done before. So it's not going to happen for Manchester either. It would be an enormous study. It would take years and years and you'd never get the answer. But what we can say is that we can create in the zoning bylaw a mechanism which would require an impact study for any project that's going to have a major impact on the neighborhood. And then we're basically protecting ourselves.
And I think that's a great suggestion and a very good step. I think it's, to me, and people I've spoken with, it's a big deal to change going into multi-use. It's a big deal. And I think we do have to look at things.
I would argue it's a big change to go from multi-use to single-family residential, which is essentially what this town has done.
And
But no one did an impact study of that.
And I'm not going to argue that. I wasn't around for that, but I'm around for this one. So I'm going to say what I really think, and this is what I really think. So I think we did take a step back and look at Hamilton's. Distances between developments. We couldn't have like 2 side by side. They give a lot more safeguards and rules around it. I feel like we just kind of threw this on the paper and we're like, well, let's just wait and see what happens. If they actually say you can't have more than I think 100 total, and there have to be a max of 50 a year, and there's like safeguards to keep things like just like we were talking about with the ADUs. You can't have more than 2 X amount of yards away from each other. I mean, it kind of makes sense. You don't want ambulances and caregivers flooding out 2 local, close to 5 properties. It just, I don't think we've done enough.
Laura. Wonder if some of what we're talking about are design standards that we could put into place to put some more physical controls. I think the zoning is a bit of a blunt instrument for getting at all of these things that we're talking about. And there are different stages like the impact study when a special project comes up, and design review, design guidelines that could be put in place before a project ever comes before us. I do have a concern about the consequences of doing nothing that we're not studying, which is just the kind of single family, subdivision of lots, tear downs, houses, and there is an impact, a negative impact when you try to rule out any density that you get sprawl. And I know when we talk about preserving our town, we're not wanting to get sprawl, and we've done a pretty good job so far of not getting sprawl. But if we put in too many controls against density, then that could be the unintended consequence of it. And I do think we very much want a walkable neighborhoods, and if we're talking about senior housing, some of that would be good to be in districts, like what happens to the DPW yard? Does that become a neighborhood that has a somewhat different character, but still feels contextual, whether that's senior housing or 2 families, whatever it might be. And so I want to strike a balance between the kind of what we're trying to do with controls, but also not unintentionally creating the lack of density that creates sprawl, and the kind of continuation of single family by right, which has its own environmental consequences and doesn't further us in terms of housing stock.
One of the things that happened, if you don't mind, that happened with this section is this came from Mark Bobrowski. And unlike the ADU proposal, which was generated by a committee, right? The ADU bylaw came about by a committee that sat down and hashed it out, and we kind of have improved or not improved, depending on your perspective. We've modified it. The senior housing bylaw is a bit cut and pasted from the Mark Bobrowski experience, which is more, I think, a little bit more, you know, his experience has been, I think, largely from places like Melrose and places, given that I've been changing typos that said city to town. Yeah, some of them said Melrose, for example. I'm wondering if as a process, and I apologize to the four of you who have been working on this for longer than I have, if this particular one would be well suited to remand to a committee that is a broader committee from the town. And it may be that and then we're giving them something we'd be giving them something very concrete, this plus maybe Hamilton's and something else, and ask that they come back to us and do the work to help advance it in a future town meeting to get buy-in and to try to address think through what do each of these mean, what additional design standards there might need to be. I guess I do feel a little bit that this doesn't feel like it came from within. It came from Mark, and Mark has a lot of experience. I'm not sure I have, but the question about districts is sort of the first starting point, right, as to whether of that.
Well, it's what you said about
yes.
Yeah, why
Special-
do we need special permits for it, not to permit a little bit of laxity and creating a better project as a result?
I don't think we have enough in there to begin with. So Hamilton, I believe, my understanding, Mr. Bobrowski did theirs also. And so just under their senior bylaw, there's a whole table of dimensional requirements for senior housing and number of units that could go in each in each district. So I think this needs to be drastically improved.
Sue.
I just wanted to clarify that Mark gave this to us, proposed this to us because we did ask for it. We asked for a bylaw for senior housing. I don't want people to think that in his overhaul, he just put this in without a request to do so. That's all.
Okay. All right, we have a proposal for trying to think a little bit about striking, I guess, right now we suggest that it's in all the districts. Does Laura has proposed striking it, I guess, from A, B, and C. Is that correct? Anybody, does that help anybody, or do we want to just go back to Mary's? Is the crux of the matter the question that Mary raised in the beginning? Do we wait till November, or do we move this forward?
Move it forward.
Yeah, you think? Okay, let's go back to the use table is in the first part of so the article says, the first part of the article is to move to add a row to table for the use table, allowing it in those districts, and then adding a new section 9.3, which defines the senior housing. Yeah.
So my question is having to do with the affordable housing that we're trying to get to and the work of the Manchester Housing Authority. Maybe Chris, you could speak to that, whether this has any impact on those goals if we do this now or later, and how they're connected or not.
Yes, of course it would have an impact. because those projects are gonna be affordable housing anyway, they have to be. The alternative is to go through a 40B process, in which case we'd probably lose all control over the design of it. If it were under a special permit by the town, then we'd have much more control. Which is why I would advocate for a special permit rather than a 40B mechanism.
Kind of got a sense of the issues. I'm gonna reframe Mary's motion in the affirmative, which is, I'm gonna move this ahead in November town meeting as written. And we can certainly continue to think about it as we move forward, but so my motion is to move this forward to the November town meeting. Do I have a second? Okay. I think we've had a discussion. Is there anything new that somebody would like to say? And I guess, I think everybody said what they need to. Okay, all in favor of moving it forward to November? I'm gonna vote yes. Okay, and opposed? Okay. So we're gonna move this forward to November. I think I'm gonna keep us moving tonight. If there are other additions, just like with ADUs, I think we're still can take those up. So it's 4-2 to move forward to November. Sarah moved it and Chris. Sarah moved it and Ron seconded. Got that, Sue?
Yeah, yes, thank you for repeating it.
Okay. I'm gonna, I can figure out where we are. Yeah, where's my cheat sheet? Yes, we're moving backwards. Okay, I'll just, we have one motion for the residential conservation cluster, which is to modify section 9.2.1 purpose. Let's just go to that. Article. My pages are all mixed up. Yeah, no, my pages just got all mixed up now. I went to look at my use table and.
Residential cluster of 1. Fine.
It wouldn't be a cluster.
I know.
Every cluster, but not as a type.
I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Right.
So what would be the,
What would be the impact of it?
Anyone who has double lot size can build another unit.
They could do that now.
Not necessarily, this like eliminates frontage and you can have, like, you have a front driveway, I could build in the backside of my property with this, is my concern.
that'd be a cluster of 2.
Two, that's a cluster of 2.
It's already existing.
Yeah, but you'd be adding, so the cluster would be a 2-lot cluster.
You could have a 2-lot cluster. But only by special permit.
Okay.
Have we denied this?
Well, with everything in this town has to be by special permit, and so we have to do it.
Okay, let's okay, let's. My pages are all mixed up. Okay, so the motion is to delete 9.2.1 number 4. Encourage screening of new residential downtown roads, open spaces and scenic, and renumbering the balance. That was yours. Was that something you suggested?
I suggested that, Sarah.
Oh, okay. You want to tell us what you're thinking there?
Yes, I think I wrote it in there. So this just assumes that new residential development will be inferior or obtrusive to existing neighborhood character. which it seems to me to be the wrong message, as the intent really from this bylaw is to create contextual housing that simply uses land more effectively, and to say, well, it's going to be inferior, let's screen it. I just think that's assuming that it's not going to work well. So
it's simply a purpose.
yes, it's a part of the purpose statement. I think it's given the wrong suggestion that this is a bad idea, that we need to hide it, when I think that if it works well, and I assume that it really will improve neighborhoods.
My question is, why was it in there? Who wrote this?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what his reasoning was having it in there. I don't think it's just. A bunch of houses, yeah.
All right, so Sue has suggested that motion, not emotion. Does anybody want to move and second that? I know, that's why I'm asking if anybody wants to make a motion on Sue's recommendation, or do we want to leave it as is?
I'll move that.
Okay, Chris is going to move it and Laura is going to second it to remove that. Any other discussion? Yes, Laura.
We do have protection number 5, protection distance. And just looking through this, we can add, what do you think we need to about vegetation?
Wait a minute.
Yeah, but I agree with Sue that to say that it needs screening is to say that it's a use that we don't want to see from a town road or a scenic area.
Okay, it's on the question is on purpose. Okay, Christina.
I think the meaning here, I think maybe you're reading it the wrong way. Like, the purpose is to cluster them together so you're not looking at sprawl, right? So you're encouraging screening. Like, I think that's the purpose. You're not looking at sprawl, you're looking at a condensed development. Like, isn't that the whole, but the purpose of this is to reduce the amount of development that you're looking at.
Okay, so you're saying that you would see one facade instead of 6.
Yeah.
That's kind of the. Yeah.
Reduce the amount of, like, that was the whole purpose.
Okay. Any other discussion on this one? So all in favor of deleting that number 4, say, raise your hand. Right here, you're raising your hand.
You're raising it to delete it?
To delete it, okay. And to leave it, I'm gonna vote to, so it's 3-3, so the motion does not pass. Okay, we're gonna leave it in. So 3-3 does not pass. You got that, Sue?
I got it.
Okay, anything else? Residential conservation cluster, November? Okay, let's talk about the substance first. If there are significant, some important changes, do you want to present? Go for it. Christina? Wait a minute.
Can we have a cluster of 2? Can we just have some discussion first of if we need motions or not? With a special permit. Okay, can these clusters have an ADU? So you could build this cluster with ADUs? No. Why not? They couldn't be designed with an ADU. Why?
So the question is, could a residential conservation cluster be designed with an ADU?
Because of ADU, no, they allow to do an existing building.
So our ADU is, must be homeowner occupied. So when you're building this as a developer, you are not owner occupied, so you can't add an ADU. That's a one at a time. And then the ADU, according to our proposed language, is still gonna need to meet the lot requirements and the lot coverage and the setbacks and so forth. So if the houses are clustered, I don't think that there's gonna be a way that the ADU can be met. I'm not sure about that, but it certainly can't be a part of the original development because that is not an owner occupied.
Right, so they're getting a density bonus. So there, by definition, they don't meet the ADU lot requirements.
Well, it's not an owner occupied thing when someone is building a.
But then once it exists, if we've got a density bonus, then that unit doesn't meet the lot coverage, acreage.
That's the assumption.
So I guess the
So I
answer.
would ask too, so along that scenario, so I think you could build it and then apply for ADUs because you'd already have your setbacks that you've met and approved for the cluster. Right, so then another question is, this doesn't clarify for new development versus adding on. So could you have a house, say you want to put another house on your property and cluster them? Right, but you could do that. Yeah, right, but say you have, I don't even know anymore if this requires the double lot or not, but so this is for new development and additional development.
The same amount of land as
Yeah.
what you could do by right.
Yes.
So
So,
if you're gonna build 2 units and you're in a 2 acre zone, you need 4 acres to do it.
so is this a way for in District D, and I don't want to take over yours, but it's just following the thought. Is this a way in District D to say, now you could have detached 2-family as opposed to a connected 2-family, which is our current bylaw? No.
Right, residential conservation cluster, the town has to realize a benefit, protected open space, affordable housing, whatever that might be. The town gets to decide whether the amenity is acceptable in the process of the RCC special permit, and only then. So if a homeowner comes and says, I really want to make some money by developing another house, or I'm going to move my best friend into my next house, unless they demonstrate a benefit to the town, which the town accepts, such as conservation of land and so forth, then they don't get to do that. It's not just a way to build a 2-family on your lot. You have to show the benefit.
You're saying that an applicant has to prove the benefit to the town. Can you point that out?
It's a special permit. That's what special permits do. They allow you to do something that's not typically allowed in return for something to the benefit of the town. So the town in its discretion can say, we grant that special permit, or no, we're not going to.
But I think my impression of the current special permit process is if the owner asks for, in addition to the house, I think that's not something that to benefit the town, that's to benefit the individual. So I'm just wondering where we're defining that this says has to be a benefit to the town. Okay. 9.2.1. 9.2. How does traditional character amenities? Wait, 9.2.what? Oh, 13. Okay.
So that has to be a minimum of 20% contiguous open space. Subject to a deed restriction, professionally kept in an open state. Cultural, horticultural, educational, recreational, shall be maintained by the applicant.
All right, so do we do what, so would we have a minimum space that's beneficial to the town? So we're saying it's allowed in every district. So again, if you have 12,000 square foot lot in District D. So 20% of that open space is, you know, a couple hundred square feet. Is that a benefit to the town?
We're gonna join the playground, then yeah, maybe it'd be a good idea.
But it still needs, with your 12,000 square feet, you still need to meet setback and the lot coverage.
Yeah.
Before you build, so what's the lot coverage, 20,000, so if you can't meet the requirements, you can't.
Well, but it also says that you only need 50% of the front and rear requirements, and the planning board can limit that more and can limit parking. But I just am trying to understand, because I don't understand. So if somebody has the lot in District D, I'm just picking, and meets all the requirements, the planning board could say, well, you know what, 200 square feet doesn't really benefit the town at all, we're going to deny it.
That's right.
But you also, back to Christine's question about whether or not you can take your double lot and put a residential cluster of 2, you also have to have that 10% of it has to be affordable, deeded affordable. So you're one of those residences would have to be deeded affordable to get the residential conservation cluster. So even if it's under, so we go down to such as the development proposing 6 dwelling lots should require 6, or I guess it's 6 to one unit. A development proposing 11 dwelling units shall require 2. So it's fractions of a lot or dwelling unit should be rounded up to the nearest whole number.
So
So-
if you did 2, you'd have to have
One of those would be affordable, deeded in perpetuity. So you that's really where people, you're really going to get it when you have the 6 unit threshold is really the likelihood. It's highly unlikely, it seems, in something that's less than that, unless the cluster is such high end that it can afford to carry, you know, a 4 unit, that it can afford to carry one of those.
In which case, that's a good deal for the town to get.
Right. Laura.
I was going to, I think this is relevant to the discussion we're having because I think it clarifies. I intended to make a motion to move the order, not to change the words, but to move the order of 9.29 and 9.28. Because if you put 9.29 basic affordable component first and make it clear that that's what we're trying to do first, and only then after you've satisfied, you discuss 9.28, which is the density bonus. I think that makes clear that there is no density bonus until you've met the basic affordable component.
You really want me to reformat that whole thing?
Cut and paste. But I think that it might have
Changes.
some of the kind of sequence question about. what are we doing? Sue has her hand up.
Sue has her hand up. Wait a minute, Sue has her hand up.
Oh,
Sue.
sorry. This was in response to a question quite a bit earlier. I just wanted to note in regard to whether an ADU is allowed in a conservation cluster, that can completely be controlled also by the special permit. So if you had a cluster of houses that were quite close together and you didn't think it would be appropriate at any time for them to have an ADU, you could write that into the special permit for that particular development. So I just wanted to clarify that. I can't remember now. Now I forgot. Now you're talking about affordability components. So no, I didn't. That wasn't what I was talking about. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't read 1.2.1 saying you do a cluster of 2, you need one, that one has to be affordable.
You have to round up the fraction to 1.
0.2 goes up to.
So,
1.
so
I don't. Figure it out way.
So it has to be a minimum of the total number of
Because I think the sample of 6 is used because 0.6 is greater than 0.5 and you're rounding up, but if you're below 0.5.
Okay, so should we say 0.3? Would that make it easier instead of 0.6?
No, because for 2, then you don't need it.
Or 0.1?
No.
Or maybe we should say in any cluster, there should be at least one affordable unit.
Yeah.
Was that,
Yeah. I mean, that's, this doesn't say.
Okay, well, it's fine, but I think,
so I move that,
okay,
And that's affordable within the.
yes.
okay.
Makes it eligible for listing on the SHI.
One other thing was.
Wait a minute.
Let's say this is important.
So, Chris has made a motion to modify 9.2.9 to say, as a condition of the grant of a special permit for residential conservation cluster, a minimum of at least one, and or a minimum of 10%.
I need that repeated. Sarah, can you just turn your,
I'm just making sure it makes sense. Okay, so we're changing a minimum of 10%. We should say a minimum of 10% should be spelled out. At least one or a minimum of 10% of the total number of dwellings. Right?
Plus any bonus.
Plus any bonus.
Could be
So
any,
now it is.
I'm trying to. You're not gonna build one residential, have one that's affordable. Yep. So maybe there's some benefit because of your law. Okay, so the motion. Did you get that? Is
No, I
that
didn't.
in line 105? Okay, hold
I
on.
need it completely
In
read.
nine?
Thanks.
In 9.2.9, we're gonna modify the second line to read a minimum of, and insert at least one and or a minimum of 10%, and then parentheses 10%. Spell out 10%.
Right.
And or, okay, just or. Yeah, or a minimum of 10%. Okay, so we have a motion that Chris moved. I'm gonna write that. Okay,
Units 2 to 10, 1, and then going to 10. So that's why if it's unclear, I think you're gonna have to say units less than 10, 1. I think this could be. Because I'm just going to check this out. And you might be a little more, or you don't.
Let's make-
one because it's less than 10%.
so it says a fractions of a lot or dwelling unit should be rounded up to the nearest whole number, such that a development proposing 6 dwelling units should be required to read 1 affordable units. A development of proposing 11 dwelling units shall be required 2. I think it is clear, especially now that we've added it, the minimum of 1. Yes. Discussion, Laura? Who moved it? Chris moved it, and who seconded it? You seconded it? I'm not seconding. Oh, she's not ready to second it. Okay, she's gonna modify it. Wait a minute, Laura's got the floor.
So I'm worried that the minimum of 1 on 2 or more, at least 1, is going to, again, unintentionally preclude the use of the RCC, because I think the math has got to pencil out for the development. And I think we want to encourage RCCs because they do provide other, in addition to open affordable housing, they provide other benefits such as land conservation and all of those things. So I'm not sure that every time you build one, every time you build two, one of them has to be affordable. And I need to look into this. I need to study this intent of this, but right now it says development proposing 6 that shall require 1 affordable unit, and then we add additional affordable services.
I'm looking to see what we have today.
Okay.
Sarah, what we have today is anything 6 or over, and that's why it's written that way.
There's also a minimum of 5 acres.
Right, so we're striking the 5 acre requirement in this one.
We really want to under the affordable number. That's what developers are going to do. We're not going in the right direction with this affordable housing. So we can do it, but we're going to create more of a affordable housing issue in our town. I think at least short term, we need to put these in place to capture affordable housing. Otherwise, especially, I mean, I took a look at the map today. All along District D, there's plenty of places that are 12,000 square feet. You can say, I can extend Powder House a little bit. That's my easy 10 or 20%, and you're going to have another unit there. And developers are going to take advantage of that all day. So unless we put some affordable 1-to-1 here, under 10, I think we're going to be opening ourselves up for developers abusing this. The last thing I wanted to say when I was looking at Hamilton's, they have a local preference, which this doesn't acknowledge.
Okay, Sue, Chris has moved that and I seconded it to get it moving along.
So if you have local preference, you may run into troubles with listing it on the SHI, which is what we're trying to do.
So I think you can offer it to locals first.
You can.
Well, we have it on here. We have it on 9.2.9. 109. It says on the right.
Oh, that's a little bit different, but
For a period of not less than 120 days after notice thereof.
that's where if you're going to sell a restricted unit.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the table for this minimum of 1 affordable unit in the RCC. Are there any other discussion on that? Speak up.
We want to encourage residential clusters, so I think 6 or more would require 1.
Okay, so, all right, so you're speaking against the minimum of 1 and, okay, any other things? Let's, so all in favor of inserting the at least 1, raise your hand, please. All against? Okay, the motion succeeds 4-2. Okay. Okay. Excellent. Okay, any other proposed changes to Article 9 residential conservation cluster? Anybody listening? I guess everybody's fallen away, but I do think that the rest of it after these are quite, we can whip through a bunch of them. I think I've looked ahead. So just circle it, any typos you find, I think just, yeah, okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Well, you might want to do it in the water overlay district.
Well, just merely for lot coverage, which is gonna go way down, so you're not gonna be able to do too much.
That's why we want to do it.
Reduces. Yeah, fewer driveways. More to six.
Yeah, I mean, it could, I'm saying it's not that's not a slam dunk. So just some of my other concerns, where's mine? Is the reducing by 50% the side and rear yards, that could be a burden on abutters. The density bonus analysis, like, you know, maybe I just need to do some number crunching on my own. That's a mind bender with, you can add 10%, then 10% more, and then, you know, yeah. That could be impactful, especially in the more densely populated districts now. You know, again, I don't think, for me, it's not a one size fits all for all districts. And so I would like to have some more data.
Give a motion?
No.
I just want to
Narrow it. Oh, it's cool. Thank you. Any other motions for the residential conservation cluster?
Laura.
Okay. Hold on. Oh, yes, she wants to reorder.
I want to reorder,
Okay. That's fine.
particularly as we're talking about the importance of the affordable component
Mhm,
and the changes we just made. So 9.29 basic affordable component
mhm,
would come first,
mhm.
followed by what's currently 9.28 density bonus, so that you follow the sequence as you read through, that you meet the basic affordable component, and only then do you discuss the density bonus. I
Okay.
think that's much clearer. I do have one question about number 91. Maybe this is part of my motion, but I don't know what, where the planning board determines that the applicant has offered significant amenities to the town. So that's where we get to say
Mhm.
up, down. Yes, you've met that requirement, including but not limited to infrastructure improvements, equipment or technical assistance, or the preservation of land outside the RCC. What is technical assistance and why would we accept that? That's a non-tangible
I agree.
benefit.
Yeah,
I'm not even sure what equipment is. That could be like playground equipment, but I don't know if we want to
Yeah.
allow.
I
Got it.
suggest, can I modify your,
Certainly.
your motion to renumber 9.2.8 and 9.2.9 by switching them?
Yeah.
And strike, what is the technical assistance from line 91?
And equipment, I would say.
Yeah,
maybe
tech and
strike
equipment.
That too. So strike from 91, equipment or technical assistance.
Got that, Sue?
I have it. I think it was probably put in there. I'd like to find it, but I don't really, it's not a big deal.
I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah,
We can,
I don't know why we accept something intangible as a.
okay, do we have a second? Do we have a second for this one?
So just for example, equipment could be a fire engine. It could be anything like that.
I think that's so different than land use. I think that's like a bribe.
I don't, feel free to take it out.
Okay, okay, let's vote this one unless you have anything else on that's related to this.
So there is one thing.
Yes.
On-street projects, that affordable went outside. So how can we change this to make sure that the affordable units stay?
I think that is out on this. It's not offsite
It's
anymore.
not outside.
We took that out. I believe.
There's also the cash contribution. Instead.
That's been removed. That's been,
It has to be, if you want to say.
Okay.
Where is it? Yeah.
I know, let's put it in. No,
They were before that. That rule was in effect, that's why they put that doing it up. It's not.
The minimum of one on-site.
Okay, so let's first vote the Laura's motion, which is to just reorder and to strike equipment and technical assistance. All in favor? Okay, 6-0 on that one. Thank you. Okay, can I make a
Can you
suggestion?
just tell me who moved and who seconded? I'm sorry.
Laura moved it and Ron seconded it. Thank you. And then to Christina's point, can I offer a I think it's been I think all that's been removed. No, from the existing.
That's not what I want, though.
No,
That's
no.
fine. I really need to be within this.
We all agree with you, I think. Yeah.
Me too. Why does it matter where it is?
Because we're giving the bonus to this. I think I agree. They gave a cash.
Oh, it did a crappy one over there.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm on board.
Oh, okay. So it's in number 3.
We already had a minimum of 1. A minimum of 2. No, that's a minimum of 1. Right. Density bonus.
Minimum of 1 unit, 100% on the lot.
Put it right up in, no, what if we put it right up in 9.2.8, because then it applies, the density bonus shall not in aggregate exceed 20%. The density bonus be awarded in the following circumstances when, which occur on site or something like
What
that.
about increase the number of dwelling units on the lot? On the maximum number.
Shouldn't it be up front though, before all of these?
All density bonus for all bonus units must be located within on-site. I mean,
Right. Well, and also all of the attributes have to be on site too.
Yes.
It's a good point.
I wouldn't say that all attributes would need to be on site. Sometimes landowners own other land that they could offer.
Right.
I think being too prescriptive might be harmful in this case.
On-site.
You might want to.
So at least one addition of any special permit for residential commitment. How about, can I just after dwelling units in line 105 say on site? A minimum of at least 1 and or 10% of the total dwelling units. And at least 1 or minimum of 10% on site.
On site.
On site.
Perpetuity.
Yeah, on site.
105.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's the basic, and then.
I don't think that's, well, maybe it's.
So Sarah, do you have a new motion for a change to a previously approved change?
We're working on it.
Okay, thanks. I can only hear bits and pieces, so.
Isn't it in number 1, which is at line 86, for the additional 10% of the site over the open space?
Because that's a bonus, you don't want to 2.8 is gonna be in that first paragraph.
Right.
Well, to increase the number of dwelling units
The site,
on the maximum number.
right.
They just at the end of line. Oh, we got it in there. We got it there.
Yeah. Right. But I think that, so what Laura's saying is add it in line 82 on page 3. The planning board may award a density bonus to increase the number of dwelling units on site. And then down in the affordable units that we just modified, a minimum of at least one, and no, a minimum of at least one or a minimum of 10% on site of the total dwelling units, or of the total number of dwelling units on site. Yeah, dwelling units on site.
Yeah.
So add on site after dwelling units in line 105. Fine. Okay. Anybody object to the addition of on-site in those two places? I'm going to consider that to be a typo. Typo. I have some typos for you. So for us, okay. Okay. Excellent. Any other question, modifications to motion number to residential conservation cluster? Christina?
9.2.10. Dwellings that are attached by shared firewall may be allowed by special permit, where in all districts, is that what we're saying? So a cluster of townhouses anywhere?
The idea here is that you get tighter development with less impervious.
I just.
Brook Street, the brook is even better example. Where the cricket used to be.
Well, I had a question on the same thing. I'm wondering if this is because at the end of 9.2.10 it says dwellings that are attached with a shared firewall may be allowed by special permit. Aren't we in a special permit?
Well, that's a good question, actually.
Oh.
Maybe allowed, maybe allowed.
But or within the special
Yeah, it is redundant.
I would say within, but I don't care.
within
Okay, good point. Okay, any other residential conservation cluster change amendments?
Sarah, did I just hear another change? Or the type?
Because it's sort of a typo. Okay.
Okay.
I didn't see any motion changes for the adult entertainment. Working backwards.
I'm gonna suggest something on non-conforming lots.
Sarah, can you move the,
Sorry.
thank you.
I'm gonna suggest, it's getting late, and I think we can actually make a lot of progress on some of these other things, that we push off the non-conforming use, and let you guys all read these suggested changes by Sarah, because they are actually kind of weedy, super weedy. And they're in this packet, article motions for Article 7. And that I would like to see, my opinion on this is that we should have town council weigh in on this section. We have Mark Bobrowski's opinion, but at the end of the day, town council has to, this is the philosophy piece, but before we talk about that, let's get it right. And have them opine on that's my view, is that this is, so at least let's table this one until next time. And then think about whether, well, my suggestion to have town council kind of sit with us and make some suggestions. Is that acceptable to people for tonight? To move. He gave us the cases, but we could get that. I think we could get that, and that would be good to give to town council for sure. Yes. So Sue, the question was, can we get from Mark what the case law that he has referenced for section 7 for Mark, he being Mark Bobrowski?
Okay, but I can clarify the excessive lot coverage question. I mean, Sarah flagged that and wanted to change it, but that's the language that we offered. And I say we.
Can I suggest that we table this one for the non-conforming use whole section, just because it's late and I'd like to try to get through a bunch of these others. And one of the reasons is I'd like to try to start sending some of these in a packet, a couple of them to council, so it's not a huge thing at the end. Yes. Okay. Yep. And the curb cut.
Curb cut, I don't know, Sue, with that application got finalized on that curb cut on Bella. Did we get the completed application?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that conversation that you just all had.
The curb cut on Arbella Street, did we get the completed application?
We took it out last time. We started.
Wasn't that last week? I think we got the completed. Yes,
My
my understanding is that we have that completed application.
Can we get that in the packet for everyone? And then secondly, this
Is that for the 26th?
for Monday.
Yeah, the 26th.
I want to do the agenda by tomorrow morning, right? So,
Okay.
and the application on the water overlay district, does that guy want to come in on Monday?
You mean for
Pleasant Street?
47 Pleasant?
Yeah.
I'm sure he would be delighted if that's available.
So he'll come in and we'll just brief the board on what he's doing. I don't think anything's going to happen, but he can at least brief us.
Okay.
And then the only other outstanding, there was another application, it escapes me now.
The Parks Department?
Yes, but that's not till the second week in October, right?
We got that in order to be able to put in the public hearing notice in the paper. That is a special permit, so that requires a.
That needs to go on the agenda for Monday?
No.
Okay.
The
All right, so
11th.
we'll have a light, I think we'll have a light agenda, Sarah. I think we can maybe get through this on Monday.
So let's see if we can get through.
Section 6, and then maybe we have any energy left, we'll come back to section 7. You're not ready to talk about 1 through 4. I think when you look at least the motions that we've come up with for 1 through 4, well, why didn't we give this to you in advance? One is we just got it, a few people sent them still on Monday, and Greg had, based on your comment last time, Mary, had said that if we are working on it together, then it's a document that has to come here first rather than in the packet. He said, so, I don't know, maybe we could have put it in the packet, but that was his advice presented at the meeting. So this whole thing about working on thing as a group, because it was a group document. We had Laura's motion, so that's why Sue assembled it. Anyway, maybe we can not have, it seems crazy to me, but I know, I can't. Okay, so section 6, let's take that one, because section 7 is, I'm probably not able to think about it. So there's section 6. The first one was a suggestion by Ann Harrison. It is around special permits, and we have say on-site shower and or bike racks, and her suggestion is just say and bike racks, so strike the or. And yeah, typo. Any objections to that? So section 6, where's this stuff? All right, 6, that's page 12. No, page. It's actually it's 6.3.8. Number 5 on-site, and it's that traffic. It's under pedestrian and vehicle access traffic standards. And number 5 says on-site shower and or bike racks for employees. So we do not drive to work. And the recommendation, this is in the LCD, for example, if you're going to have a, this whole transportation thing is, let's have on-site showers and bike racks, not and or.
So we're going to require the shower.
We're going to require a shower.
Even if they're not lead, they're going to leave building, they're going to need a shower.
I think the thing to notice in that is that none of these are required. These are options. So I think it's it's really irrelevant whether it says and or, but
Okay.
they're all options.
Here. 3.8. That's the beginning part and not the. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I gave you the wrong thing. It's a part, it's on page 12. I had them. So it's line 355 of section 6. I can see that double siding is challenging. Because I don't have mine stapled, so now
I think it's fine. Optional. May incorporate.
Okay, so it's maybe it's not, we shouldn't worry about it. What do you think? Not worry about it?
Call it a typo. We can change it.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna strike or. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is more substantive. Section 6.3.3. 9. It's not line 134. So these are general standards. And it says the proposed development shall maintain a positive financial position and social benefit to the town. And the comment was, it's impossible to fully determine. Okay. Okay. Anybody? These are motions that were put forward, and it's, so this one was put forward by Sue actually, she suggested we talk about it, and I changed it to a motion. So I guess the question is, does anybody want to move this? And I'm hearing none. I think it's hard. Sure.
Well, the for the long term, I think is part of that.
It's hard to
It's hard to
quantify.
You can just strike.
Well, can I just leave? Maybe we just leave it.
Fiscal position, social benefits for the town. Yeah. I mean,
It
is very difficult to quantify what for the means, but if it's one of the things that you have to demonstrate, you're maintaining a positive net fiscal position and social benefit.
I'm wondering if it's is it in our existing rules?
No, I don't think so.
Do we talk about fiscal impact anywhere else? We require that as part of the. Sure, and we might require a fiscal impact study, which would be more.
Which sort of gets to the point of schools and everything else.
Yeah.
All right, I'm okay leaving it in. I think it's also consistent with comments that we have heard from the public. Would be leaving it in would be consistent with comments we've heard from the public. Okay. Okay.
Or planning boards to require fiscal analysis to ensure the long-term benefits and costs to maintain a positive fiscal position.
Okay. Good.
Long-term benefits will also be taken into consideration. So I guess we said it there, so
I think it's okay. So we're not going to deal with that one. Okay. Page 13, number 10. What line is this? This is line 385 and 386. It says the max, this is Dan Harrison's comment, but I would agree. Oh, sorry. It's number 10 of,
yes.
Yes, number 10, maximum parking. The maximum parking allowed for development shall be no more than the minimum number of parking spaces, which sort of seems like a very prescriptive. So I proposed that we amend it to say something like, and I was just to get discussion going, the maximum parking allowed shall be 1.2 times the minimum number of parking spaces allowed under the zoning bylaw, unless justified by the special circumstances as described by the applicant and approved by the FCG.
Units, and they wanted to have 100 parking spaces.
No, the minimum is going to be in section 5. It's the minimum in section 5 is going to say for this many units you have to have 30. And I'm saying, so this is saying if the motion is 30. And so we might say, this is saying the most you can have is 30 is the minimum. Seems to me to have the minimum and the maximum be the same is kind of silly.
I think that here, where they're trying to limit the service parking that's created. So we want more parking to be consideration than structure or something like that. But if we have to be careful about.
But out in the LCD, we want to, or take the high school. I mean, I lived through the parking thing at the high school, right? So there was a lot of discussion about how much parking to have, and I don't know what the minimum was, but then you've got people coming from Essex, and you've got staff, and then you've got the pressure that every kid wants to drive, and should they? And then, so I think the school proposed at the time a lottery system for the parking, and then you have events. So in that case, events where the grandparents drive there, and there's no parking, and the neighbors don't want, yeah, so the neighbors don't want the parking all over the streets and not be able to park in resident parking. So, that's an example, whether it's good or bad, how it was resolved, but it's an example of a special circumstance that's kind of hard to anticipate.
Just strike the 1.2 tons and just say the maximum is the minimum unless justified.
That's fine.
Well, who's justifying it?
Well, and but in the case like of the high school, for example, there wasn't budget to go up, there was for sure, and there was, but they also, the other, when you don't have enough parking, it rarely in this town means that people don't drive to the event. It means people drive to the event and park illegally and park on the street and that kind of thing. So I think that,
I want to cover that a little bit.
well, maybe sometimes. So I think that there are, so I don't care what we put here, but I just don't think as written it makes sense. So certainly, or as justified by special circumstances as described by the applicant and approved by the SPG would be fine in my mind, something.
So,
Yeah.
So looking back at the cornerstone search, we were convinced that they did not
Right.
need more apartment spaces for the 1 day a year, or maybe 100 people or something. So then you're building a development footprint for that maximum. parking.
Agreed.
That's not the right way to build a market, because this town looks at it, we'll have more parking than we'll have structures. Which one do you design for the average?
Agreed.
People coming in and out, and maybe we accommodated a different way. We have an event, a special event, you might need to have satellite parking where you provide shuttle buses to the event. So everyone's developers are gonna wanna come in and they're gonna say, well, once a year, all staff together, all the campuses are gonna come to this campus event. For that day, we need
200 parking spaces instead of the average, which might be 100.
Yeah.
we can't give a soft, hard quantified thing that says, well, we justify it.
Okay. So, but there is no maximum. The maximum is just, all we have is the minimum.
We're saying the parking table, this is what the use as defined requires for parking. And most of those parking tables, which are from the 1970s usually, are defined as heavy on parking use. And so if we start to open that door for more parking, and no justification of why they want more parking, we get that.
I just feel like there needs to be at least some review, allowed review. This is pretty definitive that you can only, whatever the parking table says. And I do think that there are other uses that we haven't contemplated in the parking table that might really, it's in section 5, which we're not modifying, by the way. Yeah, no, but
I'm just saying something that needs more caregivers, something like that might just, like, I was thinking of as we were talking, the healthcare system.
well, I'm just thinking like cell signaling, for example, they're gonna have 400 employees, let's say, I don't know how many they're gonna have, 100, 400 million.
And
I don't know.
I don't know, today,
Right.
yesterday, 400 people needed parking. Today, 280 people need parking.
Right, because they're working by home, right?
You know, open the door to-
Right, and Right. No, I don't want parking either, but I want to make sure that we don't, on an everyday basis, create unintended consequences. So I just feel like it should be, I'm fine with leaving it as is under zoning bylaws, comma, unless reviewed unless modified by the board or something, by the special permit, by this process.
It's gonna be more than that. It's gonna be-
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
They're gonna have to go.
just by a parking study.
Yes,
If they want to demonstrate.
By a certified engineer.
yeah, okay, unless traffic, certified engineers, traffic engineers love to build. parking.
Yeah.
Sarah,
Yes,
can it just say unless the applicant shows and the SPGA agrees that the additional spaces are warranted?
that's good. Yeah. But
I think the burden of proof should be on that.
Right.
We haven't, if you really sure, but if they want to make a burden of proof with a traffic impact study by a licensed engineer. Then, the SPGA may consider the request.
okay,
The burden of proof is going to be on the applicant.
just additionals. Okay,
So it still leave that first sentence as the default.
yeah, okay. Okay, so the maximum parking allowed shall be the minimum number of spaces allowed under the zoning bylaw. Required, unless the applicant can justify additional spaces with a traffic study by a licensed engineer and approved by the special permitting granting authority.
I would just.
I'm sorry, but you're gonna need to just slow that down a little bit so I can,
Yep,
Can we break that into two sentences because it sounds
right,
so the default is.
okay. Okay, the maximum parking space allowed shall be the minimum number of spaces allowed under zoning. So no changes there, period.
Period.
Okay, the applicant may apply for additional spaces,
Parking only.
additional parking with, only with a traffic study by a licensed engineer and approved by the special permitting granting authority. Okay, okay, do I have a motion for that change? I'll make that motion since it was my original thing. Anybody want to second that?
Okay.
Second from Laura. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Cost
At their cost.
at the applicant's cost.
Expense.
Expense.
Okay. All right, I'll write that one up for you. Okay, that passed 6-0. Sarah moved and Laura seconded. Okay, the next one is, Laura, you made this motion. 6.3.7.
Line 2.8, which is also 6.3.7, item number D.
Item number. Oh, adding in.
Yeah. So the existing says site design should be guided by energy conservation and sustainability principles. I'm modifying that to say site design should be guided by energy conservation and sustainability and resiliency principles. Best practices to protect human and environmental health.
Well said.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? All right, okay, 6-0 for the next, the one that's in the middle of the page there about
Is it-
resilience.
can you just tell me who moved and seconded?
Laura moved it and Laura, Chris. Okay, great, 6-0. Okay, site development standards, 6.3.7 shall change to should. This is you too, right? 6.3.7 site development standards. Provide shall be retained. Yeah.
That's not me, that's you, Sarah.
It's not me. Maybe that was
That's you?
so I'm not sure who did this. This is understory vegetation.
Maybe that was me. Hold on.
Sarah, that was my recommendation.
Okay, should.
Is the reasoning there?
The reason is a preserved tree in the middle of a developed site may not need understory vegetation. The one with an intact ecosystem would. So the understory vegetation beneath the drip line of preserved trees should be retained in an undisturbed state. I think that's fine. Does anybody have an objection to that? Okay, I think we're okay with that one as a typo. Okay, that is section 6. Any other comments on section 6?
I just wanted to ask the process question, because we had some of the motions for here. Did we reach out to the and say you had come up with I want to make sure that we're doing I just want to make sure that we're being equal to all residents, not taking time.
Well, I think that that's a good point, but I think the people that's been on the website for in this exact wording for a number of months, as well as at town hall and the library. So, but certainly, I think, you know, if there are some additional, this is not, I'm hoping that we're pretty near final, but if there's something important, then bring it up.
I was here that we were asking for more tonight, the motions, and I just did that. I hope
Yeah. Have we gotten any questions, Sue, to you? Other questions?
I have not received anything since the public hearing.
Okay. Okay, I think we have gone, okay, the only, so I'm gonna assume just section 12 that we can change Board of Selectmen to Select Board, Inspector of Buildings to Building Inspector, and he to he, she. In section 12, there are a bunch of places that it's just, if you take my handout, just, I can't imagine you, I think Mary, you already pointed that out a while ago. There's still some he, the building inspector is the he. You want another copy? I have. There it is. So I think everybody, no, any objections to that? That was the only section. Okay. If you find those, can you just, maybe we can, Sue, why don't we do a search for Inspector of Buildings, Board of Selectmen in each of these articles?
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's different. Yeah, it's okay. That's a different context. But he, no, I know, but okay, so that one's pretty easy. All right, it's 9, is it 9:10 or anybody want to go back to section 7? You have specific, there was a whole set of things that came from Sarah Mellish.
There was more in section.
Yeah, we had said we would only talk through. So we can get through I think we can do articles 1 through 5 on Monday.
Sarah, was there one more in section 5, adding the resiliency statement?
Hey, wait, and I just picked that first one in section 5 as an easy one. That's sort of obvious, and then we'll take the rest of section 5 up on, so everybody has a chance to prepare. Let's, how about section 7? Mary, did you want to talk about that, or Chris, do you want to just walk us through these? Because most of these came from Sarah. I'm gonna just walk that for starters. Let's.
Okay, I'm doing my best. 7 is non-conforming lot. Non-conforming, this is non-conforming lot.
Hold on.
And the issue here is, since most of the town's lots are non-conforming, how should proposed changes to buildings on non-conforming lots be handled? Currently, anybody who wants to make any change, dimensional change to their house on a non-conforming lot, has to get a special permit. And what the chairperson of the ZBA wants to do is make it, and I think this is what the case law says also, is that if you make a change to a building that does not worsen a nonconformity, that should be allowed by right. So for example, if you are in violation of the setback, but you want to extend your house somewhere else on your building that does not affect that setback, that you should be allowed to do that by right, as long as it complies with the rest of the zoning regulations. And that includes also the area of the building. And this is one thing we could talk about. One of the things theoretically the inspector of buildings could do is say, you want to add a second story to your house, as long as you don't exceed 100% of the floor area, you're allowed, if you don't go higher than 35 feet, you could put a second story on your house without having to go to the zoning board of appeals for a special permit. Now, some towns say,
I just lost.
and some say, 50%. What Mark probably called, I'm sorry, if you had a ranch house and you want to put a second floor on it, you'd be doubling the size of your house. And so that, as long as you didn't further exacerbate the setback requirement or lot coverage, that should be allowed by right.
So if you are, I'm sorry, clarify question. So if your ranch house, which is 1 story, does not meet the setback requirements, and it's right on the lot line, then this says that by right you can go up a story as long as you don't enlarge the footprint. And that's not
setback violation worse.
Some of what we're talking about was, I'm trying to think of the word. It was minor changes that are, yeah. So is that a different thing?
So we've sort of been through all of that. What I wanted to do is just at least go through these couple of changes that Sarah suggested.
Okay, so for example, currently a variance is required in section 7.4, except as provided in 7.5 below, which is the by right business. The reconstruction, extension, or change of a non-conforming structure in such a manner as to increase an existing non-conformity or to create a new non-conformity shall require variance. That requires a variance. But if you're just increasing an existing non-conformity, that should be a special permit. So for example, let's say you have your exterior wall is 10 feet away from the property line. And you want to extend that wall further down. So you're making it worse, but you're trying to. So in that case, you don't need a variance, you just need a special permit. I mean, this is really kind of.
What's the
So-
likely outcome of a
So a variance requires you show hardship. Special permit does not. So it is a higher bar to, that's right.
Bobrowski introduced this, I think, might be a little, I don't think he did.
No, this is, he didn't.
Our town has bullied this down with less than 100%. So.
Yes. So Sarah thinks because so many properties are non-conforming in this town, which was, well, which may have been done on purpose, that we should make it easier for people who have non-conforming houses be able to make improvements to their houses without having to show a hardship. Mostly it's lot size.
So let's just use the ranch. So if
Sure.
you're in the setback and you have a ranch and you want to put a second story on, the setbacks are there for a reason, right? To give people space. If you're in the setback and you go up another story, now you're actually, to me, you're encroaching on someone else's. And this is what we're saying, by right, we should be able to do. I do have a problem with this, and I think the town does too. The town has already spoken on this. So I'm concerned with this.
Setback is, I agree, is there for a reason. But if you are on, if you're in a house that's in a small lot,
Small lots to continue to exist. That's our historic development pattern. Then when should you be able to make changes to your house without requiring a variance versus being in a setback and potentially, impacting your neighbor's enjoyment? What's the thing we need to fix? Is it the coverage or the? But I don't think she's arguing about special permit.
So if you are in the setback and you're extending a wall up or sideways, that requires a special permit.
Right.
But it does not require a variance, which it would now. That's
Which
the
is what
difference.
the proposed bylaw was changing from our existing bylaw. Because we don't require a variance for that now.
Yeah, we do.
We do, sounds like. Now, the variance part was new.
Well, the existing bylaw is
It was
pretty,
this proposed bylaw was making it stricter. more strict.
yes, it was.
Yeah.
And that's what Sarah Mellish wants to
Correct,
undo a little bit.
correct. But I think we're talking about a few different things. We're talking about the variance and 100% change.
Yeah, so I think, if I can just clarify, I think Chris was sort of giving an overview of this change. And now on this piece of paper is Sarah's proposal. So,
We need to look at 7.5.
yeah, but wait a minute, her suggestion is except as provided in 7.5, and 7.5 are single and two-family residential structures. So, so things that are not single and two-family residential structures. So, three-family or a commercial structure. It's saying that you would need a special permit, not a variance, if you are in the required yard. So that's the difference and then in 7.5 has a whole, that's a different thing, different set of things. So so that's non-conforming use, single or two family, which is more relaxed than our current, which is that you can do the question, what you described, add a second story allowed. If you have the following circumstances shall not be deemed to increase the nonconformity. If you have insufficient area, insufficient frontage, encroachment. Here again. So, and excessive lot coverage. And there's a typo in that one. So, does not. So let's start with the typo's easy. I think in line 96, which is excessive lot coverage, it should say
That's not a typo. That's not a typo. She's misunderstanding.
Oh,
It says we're getting a double negative here.
all right. Okay, so it's
I'm happy to explain that when you're ready.
okay, since I was thinking it was a typo, can we just get that one off the table? Alterations to a structure and other impervious surface located on a lot that exceeds the coverage limits within the district would be a permissible change.
So let me just put that in context. This was added as another opportunity when we could allow these uses by right, provided they didn't create any new nonconformity, or provided that they didn't, that they complied with the rest of the zoning bylaw. So what was already established is that if you were in a setback, if you were non-conforming because of a setback, if you were non-conforming because of frontage, if you were non-conforming because of lot size, and then we added if you were non-conforming because you had too much impervious surface. The idea is that in any of those circumstances, if you make a change that doesn't create a new non-conformity and complies with all other aspects of the zoning, then it would fall within this.
Okay,
That
so
was the new one that the board added.
okay, I think I agree with you now.
To me, it doesn't make sense because the way I read it, it says that you're already accepting documents.
No, I think it's saying that if you.
As long as you don't, as long as you
Where
don't.
is it saying that? Because it says alteration.
We don't make it worse. So for example, you're putting out a gable on your roof. You wouldn't be adding to the,
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you could, a paved driveway, if they want to do additional work, I feel like we might want to take that back and put it into piece down. Like, I feel like we're making.
We're allowing only an alteration that complies with all the requirements.
I'm just saying, I feel like
We agree.
would like to increase it, maybe you should take this opportunity. Like, I feel like we're missing the boat on some of these, especially.
You just said we haven't said it. Yeah, because I
If it
think
is over, and it has a big driveway, we're just. allowing-
you're saying if it's over, then if before you alter it, you want them to remedy it,
If it's possible.
Can we put those kinds of, can we put those kinds of conditions? I think I think, while I'm with you in the spirit of the thing, I think that we are imposing conditions that may be unrelated to the impervious coverage. Like, for instance, you want to put a gable over your door or something. I'm not sure that we can encumber these kinds of requests. Yeah. Yeah.
So the inspector of buildings determines that it cannot change or increase the nonconformity nature of the said structure, and that such reconstruction, extension, alteration, or change does not increase the gross floor area of the structure by more than 100%. So that would be the second story.
You can't make the footprint any bigger.
And you can't increase the nonconformity. And those nonconformities are insufficient area, insufficient frontage, encroachment, and lot coverage. And so I guess Christina's point is, at least in lot coverage, could you use the gable to say, well, you can have your gable if you reduce your paved driveway surface?
Only if the gable is increasing the amount of impervious, though, right? Why would we, even though I want to do what you're doing, I'm not sure that we can, there's a precedent for putting that kind of condition on. Do you know, Ross? But if the impervious is not the driveway, say your house is a 1904 house and it's bigger than the zoning came later, and it's bigger than the zoning lot coverage would have. Wouldn't that come under special permit then? What's already covered under our special permit review?
Well, the zoning board of appeals may by special permit allow such alterations, extensions, or changes where it determines proposed modification will not substantially detrimental to the existing nonconformity or to the structure to the neighborhood. Maybe we could add there, or where remediation is.
This is all, this case is where the building inspector is himself saying.
Yeah.
What if the building inspector says, for me to grant you this variance, you need to comply with stormwater regulations? Does stormwater regulation address it there? And we don't need to try to work it into this? Because those are moving to the general, so they're not required as part of development. Maybe that's a condition. Right, but by granting a building permit, does that trigger the stormwater regulation? And you can do that somewhere else. That's the point. So maybe we need to get more explicit about when, and I don't know where this goes, but if you need pull a building permit, then you're triggering stormwater.
Sue, can you look into that for the next meeting as with our new stormwater in the general bylaw? How do we link that? Is that linked to the issuance of a building permit? We don't have to discuss it tonight, but can you just kind of look into that for the next meeting?
So the question, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear most of the conversation. So the question that you would like to ask is, does the pulling of a building permit trigger some review of stormwater?
Now that we put stormwater in the general bylaw.
Okay, it still applies to anything in our purview, anything that needs a special permit. So
Right.
you're wondering if it now, you asked about
It's applicability. I think we would like some clarity on the applicability of the stormwater bylaw broadly. When a building permit is pulled, when somebody makes an alteration to their driveway, when is it going to get triggered? How's that gonna, who's looking at, who's the enforcement agent, and how we said we put it in the general bylaw. So just circle back on the applicability of the general bylaw. for
Okay.
stormwater.
All
Okay,
right, yep, just so we do know that it didn't decrease any of our, of the planning boards.
right, it increased our, because it's stronger, but
Right.
yeah, okay.
The specific thing, if someone's lot coverage is over and they're pulling a building permit, we want them now to comply with stormwater. Who's checking that? Is it the building inspector's job? Is it the planning board's job? Is it the admin in the building department? Is it DPW? Like, who's doing that?
Okay. So do we go back to Sarah's assertion is the non-residential, not single family and not two family. She's suggesting that exterior walls are a special permit rather than a variance. Changes to exterior walls, that's the change. Yeah. So it still would get review, it's just not a variance, it's a special permit. That's her suggestion.
I think that was the best way to describe it.
Okay.
Sarah,
Yes,
I think that one may be the one that she had discussed with Mark and disagreed that I think state statute requires a variance, so I'm double checking on that. Otherwise, I think if it's within our purview, it makes sense if she, but
okay, so you can check on that.
yeah.
So Sue's gonna check on that.
So I guess for me, I think. So people understand.
Maybe that would be useful, is to create some examples for this.
This is the case where mayor's idea could be done.
No, but these are quite specific, right? Yeah. They're not, there's not 100,000 option, because, okay, so scenarios could be done. Let's leave it at that.
While we're on the select board meeting yesterday. But the liaison reports that the ZBA is taking up our zoning bylaws tomorrow.
Yes.
So
We haven't
I understand, Chris, you volunteered to get there and correct. So I just want the board to know, this came up yesterday and I think we should have representation at Chris's. So go. Yeah. Just, guide them through whatever they need.
Okay, the other thing is that Sarah suggested deleting 7.9. Which I can't even. This is the one that says it's a substandard lot. So when get rid of a prior lawful, but anyway, when a non-conforming structure is located on a lot which does not meet current dimensional requirements, such lot cannot be changed unless the change does not result in increasing the existing non-conformity or create a new non-conformity. It should say create. Result.
I think she might be giving
So-
us a double negative again.
Yeah, I know. So she thinks it's like, so. And I asked, Ann Harrison said, oh. I don't know what she said in the end. I do know what happened, but so in her case, she's on a lot, there's a lot that was conforming. And then when the District E went to 2 acres, it became a non-conforming lot. And so under this, the lot lines could not be changed to make it less non-conforming, to make it smaller. In this case, the acreage is the non-conformity. It was 2 acres and it's a 1 acre lot. In that case, there was a small encroachment of the neighbors And so they just made a deal with the neighbors to give them 10 feet, give them 30 square feet or something. But technically, this would say you couldn't do that with your neighbor, their fence is on your lot, because your lot is not conforming.
So you can do it unless the change.
But it would,
not result in an increase.
yeah, but if you decrease your lot size by 30 square feet, you're increasing the nonconformity.
But they get part of the A&R. Like you can't give away something if you're not already, if you're already so far, right? I think that's in the A&R language.
It's more about frontage. No, she's right. I think, go ahead.
You could not do it with a non-conforming lot to its size, but you could do it if, for example, a lot width where you didn't meet that requirement or frontage requirement, but you wanted to give 10 feet in the back of your property. You had 2 acres. You had 2.5 acres.
But I think this example said you didn't have enough to give.
But neither lot actually. So one lot becomes less non-conforming and one lot becomes more non-conforming. Actually, in that case, having those circumstances. So it. So more or less, both of them were in previously 2 acres. The didn't have 2 acres. Yeah. And so one lot becomes acre minus 30 square feet, and the other one becomes the acre plus 30 square feet. And you still not they're both not 2 now.
No, they both are. They both were before. They both are now.
Right. I'm saying it doesn't make it hard, right? You have no control before. It doesn't say making one of them less as they got smaller. They're an acre minus 30 square feet. More, but the other one becomes an acre plus 30 square feet. So Sarah's point is just that it doesn't let the special permit, let the CBA take those bizarre situations and act on them, or let the planning board act on them.
Well, it doesn't exist now.
It doesn't exist now.
So why-
We don't need it. Address the use to us, this language.
Yes, yeah.
I just sometimes I wonder, I mean, there's a legal kind of clause in here. I don't know what it's for.
Why do we ask Mark Bobrowski why we should have
Why
that?
don't we just run it to town council?
Of our town council?
Yeah. I had to throw in eminent domain, so. Why is that? I feel like this could be a conflict that I know. 7.1 or 7.2.
Well, A&R is a huge non-renewable law. I feel like that's not on this board, but in our life created, a mind that 30 square feet becomes lot A1 and it becomes joined with the other one because of the lot. It doesn't. It helps one lot. It's determined sometimes. So, it's like a good, or it gets a variance from the
Yeah.
It needs a variance first, usually. So, when is it like in the domains or constitutional?
I don't understand this one.
Oh, so if that's, this is saying if you have 2 acres in a 2 acre lot, in a 2 acre zone.
Yeah, and the town
And
takes
takes the land.
Takes a piece of the land. They widen the road and so they take.
So now you're not conforming, it's just saying now you're not conforming, even though you were not conforming before.
I think that's wrong. No, I don't believe that. I think you should do that. I think that's wrong. Yeah, that's kind of. Well, that's like the rezoning grandfather because of.
But eminent domain is also specifically for Units that may be made and so on, so I feel like a little bit about, I'm not like comfortable with leaving extents until the running is so. I know Mark is waiting on this, I kind of like to.
I do too.
This whole section. That's my feeling. It's like, when we get a different perspective, is one I don't know.
I agree, I agree.
So
Can we ask specific, like, why, like, you know, restrictions for, like, I would like to know.
Maybe they
Like,
would
answer
answer.
meeting.
Yeah.
But give them a heads up, and, like, I would like personally to know.
So what are we agreeing to just send this to town council and ask, yes, tell them if they came from rescue.
This didn't come from Trustee, but I think we have to tag on a list of questions, right? Because they're just look at it and say, yeah, that's good, and we're gonna know what the intent is, so.
Is it
I mean,
consistent
I have
with
like
one
one.
of these laws? That's the first thing.
But I think with some of them, it's also a question, is it necessary, right? Like, is the substandard law necessary?
Right.
Because they might, you know, when the lawyer's gonna say more in here than that, right? But we might say. So I think we all need to be clear on this same page. Very good for Travis to tell me. This isn't.
No, this is Mark Nebraska. This is his language. Gary brought the same things, but,
I think we can go into Mark.
well, he might have.
Yeah, I think it's Nebraska, but, I have other questions. Do you have other questions for town council? I don't know if the town council, like 7.2.11, change or substantially extension of the use. Change or substantial extension. I don't know what that is.
It means, for example,
The
the
substantial-
warehouses on Tappan Street.
Yeah.
So if you want to extend those uses to add another warehouse, that's something the Board of Appeals could grant under a special permit. Or if you want to,
That's new. Okay.
or if they wanted to change it to something less detrimental to the neighborhood. So you have a warehouse where moving trucks come in all the time. Now you're changing it to residential, theoretically less detrimental to the neighborhood. The ZBA could allow that also by special
So
permit.
that is the change from one non-conforming to another.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Okay. Here's my question.
I chased everybody away from Zoom. No, I didn't get up to speed on this. You're supposed to be on a lot of complexity. And you know that.
Yes, we do.
I don't think the voters on that. But they're gonna find out.
I think that there's complexity, and some people in this group have been spending 4 years trying to understand it. But we are the people who are asked to do that. And so I'm hoping that the outcome is that the voters say, we trust that you've done the right thing and that you know what you're doing, because we've spent a lot of time on it. I guess when I go to my doctor, that's what I do. Not that I'm a doctor of this stuff, but you know, and I'm not sure it's the best analogy, but there is, if we're going to bring all voters up to speed on all of these land use issues, we'll never get that done. So I would say it is complex, but the general tenet here is largely clarity, compliance with some state laws, and a few policy changes. And those are the ones that we've largely been debating tonight. And then how to make those policy changes most in the best interest of the town is what the debate is. And then the stuff we haven't talked about tonight is mostly administrative.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have gone through all this stuff. I kind of
Yeah.
an overview. I don't understand stuff rearrangement.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing is fine. I think it's going to come down to trust.
Mhm.
Those folks are showing up, and the vast majority, they have to believe that you looked at this from every angle, and they've come up with what makes the most sense for our town at this point in time. And if most of the people are there, and there is a certain element of mistrust with regard to town governments all the time, you know, that exists out there. And if they over that hump, or at least most of them can. I think there's a success. There are a couple of things that are very controversial. Maybe, you know, they are better than what I did at the time. And I think you're gonna wind up with pieces of pie. I don't think you're gonna wind up with the whole pie.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Can I make a process suggestion? Would you identify yourself?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, John. Read Ryan.
Thank you. Do you get that, Sue?
Yes.
John?
I've got absolutely nothing out of the last 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I just read through it once or twice, and that's been over the past few months, and I hear all the arguments. There's a lot that's involved here, so.
We also, hope that the other boards will help us get the message out that we're doing the hard work. And we're all here together, and there may be differences of opinions that we're working through those too, but we are here doing the work as elected representatives.
No, I agree.
Doing our best.
I'm hopeful, I'm confident that will come through in the discussion.
I also think that we gotta, if you guys have told us we have to have these hybrid meetings, and this is
Yeah.
just a comment because you're standing here. This isn't effective. I mean, we have work to do. We need a microphone, or we need to go back to the old fashioned way of doing it. I don't know what people are in the audience and.
I know, I'm trying now, but I used to have them. They are cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's not any better.
It's not better.
I tried to listen to them and I actually sent back a couple of emails.
I listened the other night and I thought it was okay. Anyway.
It's better.
This is great.
But even if we continue in person, there needs to be a Zoom function so that people can come in. People have busy lives, and it's a way to participate in your
It is.
municipal government.
Yeah, well, I have to do microphones, and this is strictly its own deal here. I mean, everyone, I really don't know how, I know how it kind of fits together, but you can plug something into your PC.
Well,
There you go.
yeah.
And it really works well. I've got one at home, I think.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
We got your extension cord.
All right.
We also need some extension cords because people bring their laptops.
When
Grab
you
soon,
see
it's almost
me,
ten.
Monday,
Okay.
I think that's what I think you have a little, what do they call it, job?
Yeah.
You use it? Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Works for 1 grand.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a different service. Yeah.
Okay. I think-
Thank you.
Okay. Good luck.
Okay.
I've been through meetings like this.
Well, we've been through a lot of them, so. Okay,
Thanks for the education.
thank you.
So my son uses, back to the boarding house, could a boarding house, just as an argument, use can change to a hotel, to an Airbnb, like a B&B, like, is that something? I mean, I just feel like there's a lot of things that we just haven't thought of the worst case scenarios on. So boarding house to a 4-room hotel. Something, yeah.
So this all requires this.
Not 7.2. Not if you're changing from one non-conforming use to another less detrimental non-conforming use. Am I in the wrong section? No, that's not special permit. Oh. Yes. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So two things. One is they're saying that the board of appeals has to make some sort of qualitative or quantitative determination of goodness, detrimentalness. So I would think that
If I were a neighbor, I would argue, I get a traffic, a number of cars or noxious odors or You know, and it's detrimental to the neighborhood, right? So it is subjective. There's no question. The detrimental is, it is a subjective criteria.
And what held them back is we denied that 7.2, changing from one non-conforming use to another.
Correct.
The ZBA clearly said, oh, if we had that, we would change it. And all the neighbors were there horrified, right? So I'm not sure who we're changing this for, right? So, you know, that's one example, but I think that's going to be a sticking point.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's gonna be a sticking point, but that doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's certainly.
I can't understand why we're doing it.
Well, let's say a gas station there
Yeah.
instead of those warehouses with lights on, the whole bit, all night long. And somebody wanted to turn that into 4 townhouses. So then you can't do that now. That gas station has got to be a gas station or a single family house lot. And even then it's a non-conforming because the lot's not big enough.
But again, you know, just playing devil's advocate, it depends what neighborhood you're in and what your criteria is. If you want to keep things single family homes, they might say, well,
That's
we're so
right.
used to the gas station, we don't care
That's
anymore,
the
right?
problem. The current bylaw, you can't even take it up. It's not allowed to take it up. So all this is doing is saying, you know, if there were a gas station there and you wanted to make 4 townhouses, that's something that the town could at least consider. We can't even.
Yeah, but
consider
if
that.
we have the, some of the case analysis in front of us because it's come in front of the ZBA. And the ZBA says we would have approved this if we had something like this. And again, I don't know how many neighbors, 20 or so, we're at there saying, you know,
But
that's the only thing. Or
that's not why we're changing the zoning bylaw because of Tappan Street.
no, but I'm saying this is a case example of the same thing happened in the corner in. Corner in.
Yeah, that's a great, better example, actually.
Neighbors showed up.
So because, so you're saying because the neighbors showed up,
The town,
then that use should be denied. But the question, I think, the larger policy question is that the right outcome? And then flip like just Tappan Street, for example, and say, if the warehouse, if I buy the warehouse and I paint it and I bring in, there's parking there for like probably 8 moving trucks or warehouse trucks, and I'm banging around and coming in at night and this and that, suddenly that 4 townhouses might be completely the opposite outcome if there was a very active, loud banging around use of that exact, whatever it is, you know, use where moving and warehousing. If that was tons of traffic, tons of big trucks, tractor trailer trucks coming and going, that you could have the exact same use and where people are like, please change it to a townhouse, right?
I would definitely agree for that.
So we can't.
It's subjective and.
it is subjective.
I think in a case like this, when we're saying, let's jump from one non-conforming to another non-conforming, potentially to another non-conforming, right? I think that's tricky in bylaws, my personal opinion. Bylaws are supposed to have a clear set of rules and be as clear as possible. And something like this is as subjective as possible, right? There's no clarity in it whatsoever. We're not saying, oh, only these uses or only 4 townhouses, not 6, or, you know, so it's a big wide open box. And I think that's what's, for me, uncomfortable and yeah.
No, I think it is true that you're trusting the ZBA to make the determination of benefit or detraction, for sure. But I also, so in our scenario, if, you know, I do think you can take the exact same scenario and say, and you can argue it completely the other way, where the townhouses would look really good to the neighbors. And so the question is, how does the ZBA, how do we create, okay. So do we give the ZBA the tools to use their discretion? We need to give them bounds, is what you need to give them guardrails.
That, you know, again, in the type of situation, or the or whatever, like what would you feel, right? You came out saying, you don't go, take the warehouse to the 4 townhouses, but what would it be? Is it only a single family house, or could it be 3? Maybe 2. You know, what could it be? Or is it cornerstone in? Why is a multi-family unit worse than an inn? I don't know. But to them it was. So we really had no.
So it's not like we're taking the neighbors away from participating in the decision. What we're saying is that now at least you have the opportunity to make a decision. The way it's, well, but you're talking about this one case, and they probably shouldn't have said that. But if they did, the point is that they can't do anything now.
You're out of time. I'm going to suggest that we
I just think this goes counter to kind of what Manchester has been, right? Like we're not, I don't see us kind of saying, oh, we want to non-conforming use as much as we can.
I would like to know if, and maybe Sue, you could call Hamilton and Beverly and Wenham or something, two or 3 towns, and find out how they deal with this issue in a couple of actual scenarios where if they have allowed less non-conforming use, what the actuals were. You know, did neighbor just sort of, how do they deal with this one, and maybe send it to town council for some input. I do think that this is a sticking point, and I think it's going to be a sticking point at town meeting, and we may want to think that.
The other thing is,
True.
and so now we're increasing more housing, we're adding to our stock, and we'll push it. Well, I mean, that's, you know, except for the residential conservation. I mean, I haven't gone on this one, but I think there's a typo in 7.2. It says, this is the section 6.3 is actual. I don't know if it's trying to say 7.3, 6.3. Actually, 6.3 is
Okay, should be probably 7.3. Because we renumbered it. Okay, check. I think it's because we renumbered it from section 6. It was section 6 something. And now we made it its own section. So that's probably why. I'll double check that. Yeah, it's probably 7.3.
If they complied, sure.
with special permit, unless it was 900 square feet. No, because you have to comply with you can't add an ADU in non-conforming if it's within.
Oh, could you do that there? Possibly, I guess. Probably not, but possibly. Well, because they're not gonna be, it's gonna be tiny. I mean, I don't know, it depends on the circumstances.
Can I also suggest that for the next meeting, we all go back and read the existing non-conformity use and really clarify what we currently have that, yeah. Oh, she knows what we have. Yeah, no, yeah, but I need to go back and read it. So, okay. Yeah, down by the mailboxes, there should be. Okay, I'm gonna just, okay. Before Ron makes a motion to adjourn, let me just thank everybody for a lot of good work tonight. We have at least the 1 through 5 proposed motions. If you have others you want to add to those, let's get them out in advance if we can, if everybody's in agreement, that would be helpful. And we agreed that we were going to ask some questions of town council on section 7 and look at Sue. Can you look at I'll clarify with her tomorrow. Hamilton's, what they're doing, just a little, well, at least one other town. And I think we also agreed that if you have some specific suggestions, particularly on the ADU, to take them up and vote them up or down. We're not going to agree on everything, but we did have a couple of specific things, like get rid of the by right was one, for example. Let's vote that up or down as what we advance. I think, but let's get them really tight so we can we've kind of talked about the issue. Let's just make the motions and see which ones and think about them in advance so we can, because I think there's some good discussion tonight.
Can I make a
Motion to adjourn.
I found, I know that some of them get along with the talk about these, but I found this to be a useful process to have people sending things in advance.
And if we can, I'll double check with Greg if we can put them together.
Together at the same moment, we can discuss.
Yeah,
I actually don't have to do that process.
good. All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Ron moved it. He's gonna. All in favor? All right. Thank you, Sue, for struggling with us.
You're welcome.
Remind me to read that.
It will be motions and votes.
Yep.
That'll be.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good night.
It's in the meeting.